Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the DN WhatIf, with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Ichigo Kurosaki Was a Hollow Hunter in Soul Society. All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details, and go to the story link to say hi to the author. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now, let's get into the fanfic. Candy. So why are we this far out again, Captain? Rangaku Matsumoto, Lieutenant of Squad 10 asked. For the 10th time, Rangaku, reports of hollows in the outer districts have been decreasing for an unknown reason according to the 12th Division. We are here to find out why, Captain Hitsugaya told her with irritation. They were currently headed through a forested area in the outer area of the Rukan district, near a village that had been plagued by hollow attacks for years. When they asked the people who or what was eliminating the hollows, they seemed to remain silent, and even lied saying they didn't know. Most likely, they were more afraid of what was out there than the hollows themselves. This way, I sense a hollow close by. The short captain took off in a blur, followed by his second-in-command. They arrived in time to see the dead body of the hollow dissipate into Rise-E particles. Ah, damn it. Looks like we just missed them, Captain. The large-breasted woman sighed dejectedly. But all the while happy, they didn't have to do any work. This is most irregular. I'm positive when I sensed the hollow, it had just appeared in Soul Society. Toshiro walked around the site looking for any clue he could find. Whoever did this also sensed the hollow and got here faster than me and killed it all in the span of a few seconds. The white-haired captain couldn't find a single trace of anyone other than himself and his lieutenant. When this situation was first brought to the Godai 13's attention, they had first deployed a few seated officers to investigate. After they returned empty-handed with no explanation for the mass destruction of hollows from all around the Rukan, a team from the 12th Division was sent to investigate. They too came back with nothing, and now all the captains of the Gotai were made aware of the situation and 4 were sent to find out what was happening along with their respective lieutenants. Captain Hitsugaya and his second Matsumoto were sent east. Captain Kuchiki and his lieutenant Renji Abare went west. Captain Aizen and his lieutenant Hinamori went south. And Captain Yukitake, who didn't currently have a lieutenant, so he brought his subordinate Rukia Kuchiki to investigate north. If there was a person or group of individuals behind the elimination of hollows in Soul Society, they would soon be discovered. Most seemed to believe that it was a group of rogue Shinigami that abandoned their duty and post. If that was the case, then the Stealth Force or Punishment Squadron would be deployed to deal with them. Hitsugaya wasn't sure what they would do next. After all, it was technically illegal for citizens of the Rukan district to fight hollows. Only the Shinigami were authorized to, because only they had the power to. But at the same time, these hollow hunters were providing a valuable service and had not caused any harm so far. It still remained to be seen whether or not they would be commended or arrested for their actions. For now, all they were given orders to do was find them. Let's keep moving, Rangaku. Odds are they might still be in the area. The two of them quickly left, unaware of the black-cloaked figure wearing a skull-like mask stepping out from the shadows. The man was an expert at hiding his spirit energy, so the captain and his lieutenant never detected his presence. The figure took off his mask and dropped his hood, revealing a handsome 17-year-old boy with shaggy bright orange hair reaching past his neck, brown eyes and peaky skin. The boy walked over to a nearby boulder and sat down, pulling a few pieces of candy out of his pocket. Ah, damn it, they're on to me now, he said to himself, picking out a strawberry-flavored lollipop. I'm going to have to be like super careful now. He removed the wrapper and popped the red candy on a stick in his mouth. Hope those Shinigami aren't around tomorrow. The next day, Rukia wandered around the streets, seeing various shops and buildings. The people here seemed to be busy with setting up for a festival of some kind that involved hollowed-out pumpkins with faces carved into them. She wasn't even sure what that was about. Separated from her captain, she wandered aimless. At first, she attempted to ask people about the hollows being destroyed, but they either refused to tell her or didn't seem to know. Growla! A monstrous roar and the sounds of children screaming made Rukia stop and turned to see a group of little kids running from something wrapped in white bandages, wearing a pair of brown raggedy pants with a skull mask, making scary noises and walking weirdly as it made to grab at them. Halt! Rukia appeared in front of the monster with her sword out, pointing at the creature. Whoa there, little girl, relax. The creature held up his hands in surrender. And what are you doing with that sword, little one? He removed his mask, revealing a handsome face underneath. Little one? I'll have you know I'm a Shinigami of the 13th Division. That's why I have this sword, Rukia explained, not liking how he referred to her as a child. She was Shinigami and a noble, and would not be talked down by this guy. Oh, for real? I thought you were just one of the kids dressing up like a Shinigami for Halloween. The orange-haired guy laughed at the misunderstanding. What's this Halloween? And why are you dressed like that? Rukia asked. More like interrogated. You don't know? Well, it's a day people dress up like monsters and try to scare each other and eat candy. He explained to her with a grin. Why would they do that? Rukia looked around to see other people dressed up in similar costumes to this orange-haired teenager. For fun, he said like it was so obvious. Well, I got some brats to find. See you around, miss. Rukia Kuchiki. His eyes widened in a way that was familiar to her by now. He must have realized she was part of the noble Kuchiki family. Any minute now he would be bowing and making apologies like all the rest. Pretty name, nice meeting you, Rukia. He put his skull mask back on and started to walk past her. Rukia was stunned that he didn't care about her status. She wasn't mad, she was actually sort of relieved. Wait, I didn't get your name, Rukia called after him. It's Ichigo Kurosaki, he replied through his mask. And no, it doesn't mean strawberry. Rukia smiled and waved as he walked off. He seemed nice. It wouldn't occur to her until much later that Ichigo didn't seem surprised that a Shinigami was patrolling the area, nor did he question it. Later. All right, kids, let's try this street, Ichigo said, still in his costume. The sun had went down, and he was chaperoning a group of kids also dressed in costumes as they went around trick-or-treating. For the past 4 years, the parents of this town had asked him to keep watch over their children while they had their fun on Halloween. They trusted him and knew he would protect them from any harm. Make sure to say thank you, he called to them as they carried their sacks filled with candy. Ichigo suddenly turned towards the nearby forested area, sensing the presence of a hollow. After telling the kids to wait here for him, he disappeared in a flash to deal with the nuisance. We'll have to wait here and see what happens, Yukitake said, sitting up high in tree with Rukia on another branch. They watched the large beetle-like hollow stomp about the forest floor. But what if no one shows up, Captain? She asked her friendly commander. Not to worry, Rukia. If no one shows up, we'll deal with the hollow before it wanders to close the edge of the forest, he assured her with a kind smile. They happened to be in the area when the hollow showed up and decided to wait and see if who they were looking for would show up to kill it. Turns out they didn't have to wait long. A figure in a black cloak appeared out of the darkness of the night and walked slowly towards the hollow. The beast let out a roar and charged towards him as he unsheathed his sword. The blade looked average, but the hilt was covered in ragged, torn bandages, and the guard looked old and rusted. The hollow didn't stand a chance. 1 second its face was a foot away from the black-cloaked man, and the next its mask was split down the middle by a powerful swing of his sword. Rukia watched in awe at the speed, power, and precision the man wielded. Her captain stood up and dropped down from the tree, alerting the cloaked figure to their presence. That was quite impressive, stranger, Yukitake said, walking over to the mysterious hollow slayer with his hand away from his sword to show that he came in peace. For now. The cloaked man remained silent as he looked at the captain. May I ask for your name? HM, was the only response he seemed to give. Rukia appeared next to Yukitake, catching the cloaked man's attention. She noticed the mask on his face, and it rang an instant bell with her. It looked just like the same skull mask on the face of someone she met earlier today named Ichigo. The still unidentified masked figure merely swung his sword to flick the hollow blood from his blade before sheathing it and turning to leave. Wait, Yukitake tried calling after him, but he disappeared into the darkness, leaving no other trace that he was there. Well, that was odd, but at least we got a look at a potential suspect in all this. Captain, I believe I've seen that mask before, Rukia admitted. Where? This man I ran into earlier today. He was dressed like a monster and wearing a mask just like that one, Rukia thought about, but realized one important fact. The difference was that he didn't have any spiritual pressure, but whoever that was clearly did, Captain. That is true, and it is Halloween, so most likely there could be a shop selling masks like that one. Did you happen to get his name? Yukitake asked. Yes, his name is Ichigo Kurosaki, Rukia answered quickly. Well, he must live in this area. If we find him, we might be able to find out where he got the mask, and maybe the store that sells them could help us find our mysterious hollow slayer. Yukitake seemed remarkably optimistic about this needle in a haystack situation they were in. Later. I'm back, Ichigo called from the entry of the house. Ichigo, a girl called from the other room. He walked into the small kitchen to see a girl the same age as him with long auburn hair, dressed in a black skirt and white t-shirt and apron over her clothes. Did the kids get home all right? Yup, the little brats made it home stuffed to the gills with candy, Ichigo grinned, taking off his black cloak and skull mask. He sat down at the table wearing only a pair of ragged brown pants. His body was not super toned, though still quite muscular for his age. But Urahara knew how strong he really was. She put an open soda bottle in front of him, while opening one for herself. "Happy Halloween," they both said, taking gulp. "I saw the Shinigami today," Ichigo dropped on her. "Two actually, and one was a captain." "Oh no, are we going to have to move again?" Urahara asked. "Probably. Can't have the Grim Reapers finding me," he said while making finger quotes at the words Grim Reapers. "I know what you're doing is breaking the law, Ichigo. But you're still doing the right thing," she said, walking over to hug him from behind. "I know, Urahara, but I doubt they will see it the same. I'll probably go to prison if they catch me." He placed his hand over hers as she held it against his heart. "But in the meantime, let's enjoy our freedom," he said, kissing her temple quickly. She smiled at him and led Ichigo by the hand to the bedroom. "Times like this, I really love the afterlife," Ichigo said, laying her on their bed. The next morning, Ichigo awoke to the sound of knocking at the front door. He unwrapped his hands from around Urahara's naked body and put on a pair of pants before heading to the door, grumbling about this being too early. Opening the door, his heart nearly stopped when he saw the same Shinigami captain and Rukia Kuchiki from last night. Luckily, his years of practice allowed him to hide his surprise and greet the two. "And how may I help you two this morning?" he smiled. But inside his head, he was chanting curse words over and over. Sorry for disturbing you so early. But are you Ichigo Kurosaki?" Ukitake asked. Finding said person was surprisingly easy. The first person they asked, Rukia described a tall teenager with bright orange hair, and they immediately knew who he was talking about and told them where he lived. "Yes, I am. What can I do for you?" Ichigo gestured for them to come inside. Rukia's eyes were glued to his abs, making the orange-haired teen smirk. "See something you like, shorty?" "And no, of course not," Rukia scoffed and turned her head away to hide her blush. The three of them sat at a small table before Ukitake began his explanation for why they were there. "My name is Jushiro Ukitake. I'm the captain of Division 13, and my associate you've already had the pleasure of meeting. We won't bother you for long, so I'll get to the point. Rukia told me you were wearing a mask when she met you, correct?" The white-haired captain asked kindly. "Yup," he said with a pop. "A person of interest we are investigating also possesses the same mask. We were wondering where you got that mask. It might help us track down this person." Ukitake noticed how calm Ichigo appeared despite a captain-level Shinigami being in the same room as him. It was very odd. "Well, I'm sorry to say I didn't buy my mask anywhere. I fished it out of the trash. We don't exactly have much money, as you can see," he said, pointing to the living conditions around the home. "You can look around the area, you might be able to find the shops that sell masks. But it might be difficult since it's the day after Halloween and most of those shops would be packing up their seasonal products right about now." He shrugged. "I see. That could be a problem." "You said we. Are there others living here?" Ukitake asked. "Yes, actually someone who lived in the same city and time as me back when I was alive. We met up in the Rukan district and have been living together ever since," he explained happily. "I'd ask we be quiet. She's still asleep, and after last night's fun is very tired," he smirked. "Get what I mean, shorty?" Ichigo asked, seeing Rukia blush again. "Cut the perverse talk in front of my captain," she practically growled. "It's quite all right, Rukia. His carefree attitude reminds me a lot of Shonsui." Ukitake chuckled, seeing the similarities between this teenager and his friend. It was actually nice and refreshing to meet someone so informal in the Rukan. "Well, we won't take up any more of your time, Kurosaki." He stood up to leave with a bow. "Please call me Ichigo." He stood up and bowed politely. "Thank you for your assistance, Ichigo." And with that, the captain and Rukia left his home. When they were gone, Ichigo let out a sigh of relief. He had been keeping his spirit energy so tightly confined, afraid this captain might sense even a fraction of it. For now, he blended into the Soul Society as a powerless, but albeit dashingly good-looking soul of the Rukan district, and that's how he'd like to keep it. Captain Ukitake and Rukia walked the street in silence after they left the young man's home. "Did anything about that conversation strike you as odd, Rukia?" the older asked in a serious tone. I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean, Captain." Rukia followed next to him respectfully. That Ichigo didn't seem at all surprised or impressed by a captain being in his home, nor did I detect a hint of nervousness in his voice. Ukitake's suspicions became aroused when Ichigo didn't even flinch when the other tried to send a small pulse of spiritual at him. Even ordinary and powerless souls would at least be a little sensitive to Ryatsu. But Ichigo didn't so much as twitch when he felt Ukitake's. "Now that you mention it, Captain, he didn't seem surprised when I told him I was a Shinigami when we met yesterday." Rukia was starting to see how curious this was. Perhaps Ichigo Kurosaki was more than he appeared to be. That evening, You ready to go, Oraheim? Ichigo asked from the front door, while biting the top corner off of the bar of chocolate. He carried a backpack containing all of his things, including his cloak and mask. He currently wore a pair of faded frayed blue jeans, a white cotton deep V long-sleeved shirt, a pair of red Converse that he got from the underground market, and orange-tinted wide sunglasses with his sword strapped to his belt. Oraheim appeared from the bedroom with her bag packed, wearing a light blue tank top, skinny jeans and sandals. Hello, good-looking. Ichigo liked making her blush with his cat calls. I'm ready, Captain. Oraheim gave him an adorable salute. The two of them walked out of their home for the last few years, and made their way west to find a new home. Not before letting their friends and neighbors know they were moving, of course. Are you upset that we have to move again? He asked with rare maturity in his voice while they walked. I'm always sad to leave our homes, she said sadly. Do you ever regret staying with me? Ichigo asked this question all the time. I made a promise to always stay by your side, Ichigo. I'm not about to break that no matter what, Oraheim said confidently. She stopped and tried to kiss him, but a pink bubble from the gum in his mouth stopped her, so she just settled for holding his hand while they walked. Captain's meeting. Report, the head captain ordered. We found nothing, head captain. Not a single trace of whoever is responsible for the destruction of hollows in the Rukin district, Captain Aizen said, taking a step back in line. That's not entirely true. Myself and a member of my division, Rukia Kuchiki, managed to confront the individual, but he ran from us. A few captains muttered how inexcusable it was for letting the suspect go. To be fair, they were not given orders to apprehend this character. Kairoku defended his friend's actions. It's true, we were merely sent to discover the identities of those responsible, Hitsugeya added. Everyone began to argue about official orders and implied orders. Enough. The head captain stomped his cane on the wood floor to command everyone's attention. The new orders are as follows. Captains Yukitake, Aizen, Hitsugeya and Kuchiki will return tomorrow to the field to continue investigation. If the rogue responsible is spotted, you are to apprehend on sight. Captain Yukitake, have a description and drawing of the suspect made for wanted posters. That will be all. Yamamoto's orders were clear and absolute. One captain in particular, while wearing a kind mask of falseness, was silently growing more aggravated. Sasuke Aizen had already discovered the anomaly of the hollows being eliminated mysteriously long before the 12th Division. He was hoping to find the source of this mystery, but failed to do so, and now the Gotai was involved. Aizen believed that whoever was doing this would have been flushed out by now, but ironically they remained a ghost. The best way to find a needle in a haystack is to burn all the hay. He smirked as he contemplated how to bring this mysterious individual to the light. Crime and punishment, you know, the bad kind. Renji was bored out of his mind. This was the 5th day in a row that he, along with his captain, had been investigating the west side of the Rukin districts. They were given a description, so they at least know what they're now looking for. A mysterious man in a black cloak and skull mask. But finding said person was proving incredibly tedious, if not impossible. Captain Kuchiki, where should we head now? He asked, seeing as they both seemed to come to similar conclusions, that this was a fruitless venture. There's a forested area nearby, Lieutenant Abarai. Go investigate. I'll continue the search on the streets for any leads. Byakuya Kuchiki, as always, took his job and orders with 100% seriousness. Renji did as he was told and headed towards the forest line, not believing he would find anything in there. Imagine his surprise when he found a large horde of hollows hiding out deep within, along with a figure exactly like the described suspect cutting them down with ease. In that moment, Renji decided to hell with his orders. For now, he would help this stranger fight these monsters. Ichigo was getting annoyed with this. Not the fact that hollows had snuck into the Soul Society again, but the sheer number of them that managed to hide right under the nose of the Shinigami was astounding. Either they were much more incompetent than he believed, or something fishy was going on here. Just as another skull-faced beast was about to sneak up on him from behind, a long segmented whip-like blade sliced the hollow's head clean. Roar Zabumaru. Renji sliced through another hollow like paper. Not bad, Red, Ichigo yelled, cutting down more hollows, one after another. After they finished slaying the last of them, Renji turned to face the mysterious cloaked fighter. Who are you? The red-haired lieutenant asked. That is a tricksy question. Let's just call me a concerned citizen trying to clean this place up, Ichigo said, and turned to leave. Wait, I have orders to bring you in, Renji yelled, pointing his shikai at the stranger. So follow them or follow your own instincts. Or are you one of those mindless foot soldiers who can't think for himself? Ichigo continued to walk away, or would have if 5 light beams didn't appear around him to lock him in place. This is a Bakudo. Ichigo looked around to see who cast the binding Kaido on him. He got his answer when he finally noticed the dark-haired captain of the 6th Division standing a few yards to the left of him. Captain Kuchiki. Renji was surprised to see his captain here, and realized he must have sensed the battle going on. Lieutenant Barai, were you about to let the suspect escape? Byakuya asked coldly. Renji flinched when he realized what his captain was asking. No, sir, I don't think he's done anything wrong. He tried to argue that the so-called criminal was anything but. Doesn't matter. We have our orders to apprehend him for questioning. Whatever laws he's actually broken are for others to decide. The sound of clapping caught Byakuya's attention. It appeared their masked vigilante had escaped the Kaido without them noticing, and was standing there applauding. Well said. Spoken like a true captain of the gaudy 13, mindlessly loyal, obedient, just like a good little doggy, he laughed. I wonder if you would slit your own throat if you were given orders to. Well, I'd love to stay and chat, but I'm on tight schedule. Ciao. And with that he vanished in a burst of shumpo. We need to go after him. Renji was stopped by the hand of his captain. It's pointless. His spiritual pressure has vanished. Byakuya stared at the place the mysterious masked man had left. The words he spoke, and the skill at which he cloaked himself made him wonder if the man truly was a Shinigami gone rogue. It definitely sounded like he had issues with the Gotai as a whole. They would have to bring in more officers now to comb this area for the suspect. It would only be a matter of time before they found him, and could finally get their answers. Elsewhere. Ah, damn it. Ichigo gritted his teeth as he pulled off his shirt, revealing the large scratch marks he got from the hollows earlier. Oh my goodness, Orihime gasped, seeing the still bleeding wounds on his back. It's fine, Heim. It doesn't hurt as much as it looks. He smiled despite the pain. Ichigo knew it was his own fault. He got careless, and a few hollows managed to get past his defense. His Zanpakuto had already chastised him for being too reckless. The old man in his inner world sometimes acted more like a father than a Zanpakuto spirit. Let me fix it. Lay down, please. Ichigo did as she asked and laid face down on the bed, while Orihime used her gift to heal the damage done to his back. Neither of them understood where her unique power came from, but Ichigo always told her that she was the perfect person to have that kind of power. All done. How does that feel? Much better, you beautiful sexy white mage. He smirked, giving her a quick peck on the cheek. Ichigo grabbed a pack of jawbreakers from his pocket, which she quickly confiscated, telling him not to spoil his dinner. Ichigo stuck his tongue out at her playfully and pointed out she was acting like a mom. Anything particular you want for dinner? Orihime asked, walking over to the other side of their new home, where the stove and sink were located. Whatever you want's fine. I need to pop in on my Zanpakuto for a bit. Wake me when dinner is ready. Ichigo leaned up against the wall and placed his Zanpakuto on his lap to get into the proper meditative position. After concentrating for a moment, he felt himself drift into his inner world. Opening his eyes, he found himself in the realm of his Zanpakuto. It looked like a huge white city up in the sky, shaped like what he liked to call a 5-pointed star cross. He looked over the edge to the ground, and like always only saw an endless gray desert, an area of his inner world he didn't like visiting. This place was a symbolic reflection of his soul, a haven city floating above a dark wasteland. Ichigo walked along the streets, his eyes drifting over the white buildings and European architecture. He looked up at the large tower, at the very top a black castle with a broken archway over it, and decided to take the shorter route and just teleport up there. Up at the castle, he was greeted by a legion of knights dressed in all the same armor with white capes, all lined up before him. At ease, boys. They all bowed before him and opened up a path to the castle for him. Each of them held a sword that was exactly the same, much like their armor. Ichigo made his way to the throne room. He knew that every single one of those knights was an extension of his Zanpakuto. But an army needed a king to control them, and that's where the old man came in. Ichigo, the man at the throne said before standing up from his seat. Before Ichigo stood a middle-aged man with messy dark hair, a thin goatee, wearing a black torn and frayed overcoat with a white button-up shirt underneath, black pants and boots. Yo, old man. Ichigo walked over to the Zanpakuto spirit. What are we doing today? It's time we forge another sword, Ichigo. He spoke somberly. Again? Come on, we just made one last week. The orange-haired teenager complained. Don't be lazy, Ichigo. The spirit of his inner world scolded as he made his way over to a workstation they kept in the throne room. It contained all the tools any blacksmith would need to forge blades and other weapons. Yeah, all right. So we making that one we talked about the other day? Ichigo rolled his sleeves up and put on a pair of thick work gloves from the table. The Zanpakuto spirit took off his sunglasses and handed them to his master to put on. All right, old man, let's get cracking. The next day. Okay, something's definitely fishy going on. Ichigo said as he cut down another wave of hollows. Again, he was dealing with a swarm of these things that managed to remain undetected while in the Rukan district. He was now more suspicious than ever that someone had to be helping them. And the cavalry finally shows up. Well, better late than never. While he was fighting, a group of Shinigami appeared and jumped into the fray to help fight these hollows. After they finished, Ichigo suddenly found himself surrounded with swords pointed at him. "You flatter me with all those swords," Ichigo chuckled, while they all looked so serious. "Our orders are to arrest you on sight. Surrender peacefully." This guy appeared to be leading the group. He had black short spiky hair, a set of scars over his eye, and the number 69 tattooed on his face. He also wore his Shinigami garb sleeveless. "What's your name?" Ichigo asked the black-haired fellow. Said Shinigami officer was taken aback, the question surprising him when it was himself who should be asking that. "Shuhei Hisagi, Lieutenant of Squad 9. Shuhei introduced himself. Ichigo smirked under his mask. So this guy had manners, which means he was somewhat reasonable. "Listen, Shuhei doll. Since you don't know how this is going to go down, I'm going to tell you." Everyone around him started to grow nervous by the nonchalant demeanor he put out. "I'm going to walk away. Then you're going to try and stop. That will be your first mistake." Ichigo paused for dramatic effect. "Then we're gonna fight. You're going to lose and I'll still walk away. That okay with you, pumpkin?" "We can avoid all of that. Just surrender your weapon and come with me," Hisagi tried to plead with. "Sorry, not gonna fly, Chico. My girlfriend's got lunch waiting for me." He attempted to walk away, but Shuhei drew his sword and pointed it at him. "Oh dear, here we go," Ichigo sighed before spinning around to slash at the lieutenant. He expected the guy to dodge, but was mildly surprised when Hisagi locked blades with him. "Interesting. Everyone get back." Shuhei ordered the other Shinigami to give them space, mostly for their safety. But he also sensed the power in the mysterious masked guy's blade, and knew he might have to release his Zanpakuto. "Oops, you turned your eyes away from me," Ichigo whispered. The next thing Shuhei knew, he was barely parrying a fast barrage of slashes and stabs. He definitely did not expect this, nor did he expect what happened next. "Akuma Yubai," Ichigo said as his left hand surged with Seireitei. He then quickly jabbed 2 fingers into Hisagi's left shoulder. "Gah!" Shuhei clutched his ruined shoulder. It felt like it was shattered to pieces. "What was that? Some sort of Kaido?" "In a way, yes. It's a little something I came up with. A friend tried to teach me something similar that would do my whole body like that. But I could never wrap my head around it." Ichigo stared at his hand for a moment in remembrance. "So I made my own smaller version that works on my hand. Does it hurt?" "It should, considering I just obliterated the bones in your shoulder. Just be glad I didn't target a vital organ." He chuckled, finding humor in the situation. "Well, if you don't want another, I suggest you stand down, sweetheart." "Not yet." Hisagi panted, trying to ignore the pain, while glaring up at the skull mask that was practically leering down at him. He refused to back down and fail his assignment. "I warned you." Ichigo raised his sword to continue fighting. "Stop right there." A voice shouted, and Ichigo froze, seeing that he was now surrounded by more lieutenants and a few captains. Captain Hitsugaya took a step forward in warning. "All right, you got me, I surrender," Ichigo shouted dramatically, while letting his sword fall from his grasp. Everyone was surprised that he seemed to give up so easily. "What, I'm seriously outnumbered and outmatched now?" He shrugged, holding his wrists out. Toshiro took that as his cue and placed a pair of Ryatsu suppressant handcuffs on his wrists. "Now let's see who we have here," Captain Aizen said, while approaching their mysterious vigilante. He quickly removed the hood and pulled the mask off Ichigo's smirking face. Rukia gasped, seeing the face of Ichigo, whom she met a few days ago. "No way," she blurted out. "Rukia, you know this guy?" Renji asked. Yukitake answered for her. "His name is Ichigo Kurosaki. We met him the other day following a lead. I knew there was something off about him, but I wasn't expecting this." Yukitake seemed just as surprised as Rukia that their masked suspect was the orange-haired young man. "We need take him back to the Seireitei for questioning," Byakuya said, reminding them of their orders. "Well, let's move out, ladies," Ichigo said mockingly to his captors. They all glared at him and began the trek back to their fortified city. An hour later, they all grew curious enough to go against protocol and start asking him questions. "Well, just Rangaku anyway." "You know you're very handsome for a criminal," she commented. "Thanks, Missy. But I'd prefer you don't flirt with me too much. My girlfriend's cuter than you and throws more sex at me than I know what to do with." Renji almost stumbled as he walked, trying to hide his laughter. "Oh snap, rejected." Ichigo held up his cuffed wrists and snapped his fingers in a sassy way. Rangaku actually blushed in embarrassment, making Hitsugaya blink in surprise, as that almost never happened to her. You know what? That was very mean. I apologize, I've had a long day. I got arrested," he exclaimed, holding up his cuffed wrists again. "By you lot." "Oh, apology accepted." At least he was nice and knew how to say sorry. Rukia stared at him oddly as she walked directly behind him. She noticed him stealthily toss a piece of folded paper back at him. Rukia quickly grabbed the paper and moved to the back of the group, where she could read it without anybody seeing. She unfolded it quietly, seeing a hand-drawn map with a message that read as follows. "Please deliver this message to Urahara now. Directions to my house over." Rukia flipped the paper over. "Dear Heim. Got captured by Shinigami and headed to Seireitei. Don't worry, I'll break out and be back in time for breakfast tomorrow. Love. Your one and only Ichigo. P.S. Give this Rukia girl a piece of cake or something." Why the hell would he tell me he's going to escape? Is this guy an idiot? Rukia sighed in annoyance. She got her answer when Ichigo turned to look back at her and winked. "Yes, definitely an idiot. Excuse me, I have to go check something out, Captain." Yukitake, who secretly watched her read the note, let her go, telling her to come back quickly. Breaking rocks in the hot sun. I fought the law and the law won. Ichigo started singing out of boredom. "Could you not do that?" Captain Hitsugaya said, clearly irritated by this young man's lack of seriousness. Ichigo stopped singing, but started whistling the song instead. As punishment, they tied a strip of cloth over his mouth. But that didn't stop Ichigo from humming the song. By the time they reached the Seireitei, most of them were ready to kill this orange-haired nuisance. "We'll take the prisoner from here." Captain Soifan appeared to be waiting for them as they crossed the gate with a group of prisoner escorts. "Oh, what are the cells like?" "Dinner at 7, please." Ichigo chuckled, purposely trying to grate on everyone's nerves. "You criminal are going right to interrogation." Soifan grabbed him by the collar and dragged him away. "What do we do with his Zanpakuto?" Renji asked aloud, holding the criminal's sword up. "I'll hang on to it in my division quarters," Yukitake said, picking up the old-looking blade and taking it with him. Renji decided to help Shuhei to the 4th Division and get his ruined shoulder looked at. Interrogation room. "You will take this seriously or else," Soifan yelled at the orange-haired young man. "All right, you win, Captain. I'll tell you everything you want to know," Ichigo said, sitting in a chair, hands still locked in Ryatsu suppressing cuffs. "First, where did you get that Zanpakuto?" she asked rather aggressively. "I found it," Ichigo stated simply. "That's not an answer." She grabbed the front of his white long-sleeve shirt threateningly. "Well, it's the truth. Years ago, I was wandering around shortly after coming to the afterlife, and I saw a sword sticking in a rock in the woods. So I pulled it out like the great Excalibur. There you go," Ichigo explained with a theatric flair. "You're getting closer to a one-way ticket to the maggot's nest." Soifan was getting frustrated with this little bastard. "Who trained you in Shinigami arts?" "Sorry, that one I can't answer. She said not to tell anyone if I get captured." Ichigo looked at the female captain apologetically. Soifan was about to punch him when a familiar presence at the door stopped her. "I didn't realize your methods had become so brutal, Captain Soifan," Anohana said with a smile that would have unnerved anyone, though Ichigo seemed to be unaffected by it. Especially for low-level lawbreakers such as him. "Captain Anohana, what are you doing here?" "This is an interrogation?" Soifan asked as the captain of Squad 4 made her way over to the suspect. "Really? I just thought this was some kind of foreplay," Ichigo blurted out, and then laughed at the look on Soifan's face. Yoruichi was right. She is fun to mess with. I'm here to do a quick checkup and see if the suspect is injured." She leaned down and placed a glowing palm over Ichigo's heart. "My name is Ritsu Anohana. I'm the captain of the 4th Division. The healing squad. Well, you're wasting your time. I don't got a scratch on me. But with the way little Miss Tight Ass is glaring at me, I won't for very long." He smiled and winked at the petite captain. "If you just cooperate with us, this can be over easily." She tried to use her creepy yet warm smile on him again, but it failed to do its job once again. "All done. You're 100% healthy, it seems. Told you. See you around, Anohana." Ichigo blew a kiss at her before she left, and then turned his grin to Soifan. "Now back to you, sweetie. Elsewhere later." "Hey, Jushiro." Kairaku knocked on the door to his friend's quartets before coming inside holding a bottle of sake. "Shonsui, come in." Yukitake waved over to sit down with him while he was busy going over various documents. "What are you working on?" Kairaku asked, pouring himself a drink. "You know that masked vigilante. I'm trying to find a loophole to whatever laws he has broken," Jushiro said, reading over another parchment. "I heard we finally apprehended him. So did he commit an actual crime?" Shonsui took another swig of his sake. "His name is Ichigo Kurosaki, And he definitely did. He even admitted to it. But I'm trying to find a good reason not to throw him in prison. He hasn't really done anything wrong. He's been protecting the Rukin from hollows where we have failed. He shouldn't be imprisoned for that. Yukite sighed in frustration. This whole thing didn't seem right. Isn't that law that says souls of the Rukin district can't fight hollows very old? So perhaps it's been changed or altered since then. Shunsui commented, taking another drink while tipping his hat. You have point, my friend. Jushiro put all the oldest documents to the side and started looking at things from the years after that law was made. After half an hour of silence, he finally found what he was looking for. Here, it says that a citizen of the Rukin district may fight against a hollow if lives are in danger and no Shinigami are present. However, this other law states that a soul in the Rukin can fight a hollow under the supervision of a Shinigami officer. So according to those two laws, our captive can legally slay hollows with or without us being there, Kairoku summed up. It appears so. Yukite stared at the documents, making sure they were correct. One was older than the other, and these laws were changed years ago during war times. So it makes sense that some people might have forgotten about them. So basically we captured someone who has broken no law, Shunsui said dryly, taking another sip of his sake. Unfortunately, yes. Yukite sighed and picked up the documents to show to the head captain that they had to let Ichigo Kurosaki go. This was turning into a proper mess. Detention cell. Ichigo sat in a wooden chair in his prison cell, watching the young lieutenant through the bars. Lieutenant Hinamori was given orders by her captain Aizen to guard the prisoner and make sure he didn't try to escape, which seemed easy as said prisoner seemed to be in his own little world. What had it got in its pockets? Yes, he wouldn't say precious, no he wouldn't. Ichigo mumbled to himself, creeping the girl out before clearing his throat. Excuse me, dear. What is it? Momo asked, while keeping a good distance from the bars. Ichigo stood up and walked closer to his cage. I have something important to tell you, he whispered. Then tell me. Momo eyed him suspiciously. You have to come closer. She looked at him like he was crazy. Come on, I can't do anything with these handcuffs, suppressing my spirit energy. Against her better judgment, Hinamori stepped closer, until she was a few inches away from his face. What? I'm going to break out of here in a minute, Ichigo whispered before grinning excitedly. Don't tell anyone, it will be our little secret. He shushed her quietly as he took a step back to sit back in his chair. How do you plan on escaping with those cuffs on your wrist? Momo humored him, taking several steps back. Easily. Would a countdown help? Ichigo asked. All right, that's enough. Momo turned to look away from him. 10. Now don't be nervous, Momo. 9. He continued his countdown. Why would I be nervous? Hinamori was starting to get uncomfortable. 8. You look nervous. There's no reason to be. When I break out, I'm not gonna hurt you, Ichigo stated with all honesty, his words actually having an opposite effect on the lieutenant. Stop it. She wasn't totally freaked yet. 7. I mean it, I have no intention of harming you. 3. 3? He skipped 3 numbers. I'm accelerating for dramatic effect. Oh dear, what's that on your sash? Momo looked down to see a pair of Ryatsu suppressing cuffs attached to her waist sash. Oh my, what sort of kinky stuff are you into? These aren't mine, Momo stuttered out. Ichigo hummed in thought, while using his now free hands to tap his chin in thought. Well then, they must be mine. Ichigo suddenly appeared from directly behind Hinamori and covered her mouth before she could scream. Hush, I told you I'm not going to hurt you, sweetheart, was the last thing Momo heard before everything went dark. Ichigo used a kaido that his friend Yoruichi taught him to put someone to sleep. Ichigo gently carried her into his now unlocked cell and gently laid her on the bed. Sweet dreams. He kissed her hand and left the cell door open for when she eventually woke up. Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Make her the cutest that I've ever seen. Ichigo hummed the rest of the song as he made his way outside. He fished an orange-flavored hard candy out of his pocket and popped in his mouth. Once he was outside, he noticed the sun was starting to go down as he tried to get his bearings. Which way out of this bird cage? Ichigo licked his index finger and held it up to test the air, which of course did nothing to help. This way. He started walking in a random direction, unaware of the pair of eyes watching him from the shadows. Sasuke Aizen stepped into the light after Ichigo had left. It appears my experiment wasn't a lost failure, Ichigo Kurosaki. Aizen's smile turned sinister for a moment before donning his normal mask. Night of the Living Dead people, or Ichigo loose in Seireitei. So what is Ikkaku normally like? Rukia asked Urahara, taking a bite from the piece of cake she was so graciously given. You met him? Well, that's what he's like, the auburn-haired girl said, taking a bite from her piece. But he's just so eccentric, Urahara interrupted. Weird, Rukia said. He just acts like he doesn't care about anything. But he does care. He cares a lot. Orihime took both their finished plates over to the sink. There's a reason he acts that way. Something terrible happened to him. His attitude is just how he copes with it. What happened to him? Rukia wondered what awful things could have happened to Ichigo to make him act so loony. I can't say. He wouldn't want me to. He's a good person, Rukia. He doesn't deserve to be imprisoned for that. Orihime looked at her sadly. I'll see what I can do. I just hope he doesn't cause any trouble. She took one last look at the note he passed her on the street that said he was going to break out. Seireitei. They really need to put maps around this place, Ichigo said aloud, wandering the maze-like streets of the Gotai's fortified city. No food court, no smoothie joint, no Sears. What kind of place is this? One would assume that now that the sun has gone down you would try to move quieter with stealth. But not Ichigo. He walked down the streets in the open without a single care. Well, I should probably go find my Zanpakuto. He'll be pissed if I leave him here. Ichigo stopped walking when he finally heard what sounded like a large group of people. Hopscotching over a few walls, he finally found what he assumed was a bar built for the Shinigami to frequent. Finally, I can get a drink. You should have seen the way this guy moved, Renji exclaimed. He was talking about the guy they captured, and how easily he took on a horde of hollows. I didn't realize you were that enamored with him, Yumichika said. I'm not. I just think he's pretty tough for a regular soul, Renji argued. If he's as badass as you say, then he's anything but a regular soul, Ikkaku added. You did say he had a Zanpakuto, Yumichika asked, following the two men to the local hangout. Wouldn't mind getting a chance to fight him, Ikkaku chuckled. The three of them walked into the bar and Renji nearly passed out in shock, seeing the very same person they were just talking about. The same person they captured earlier today. Ichigo Kurosaki in the bar making a spectacle of himself. No, you're not listening. It's a big factory with a room full of candy landscape. A chocolate river. Fizzy lifting drinks and geese that lay golden chocolate eggs. Ichigo explained to the group around him, taking another sip from his drink. That's my dream, to build that here in Soul Society. How do you plan to build that? A random Shinigami asked. I'm still working on that, Ichigo laughed awkwardly. What the hell are you doing here? Renji finally got over his shock and approached the orange-haired teenager. Getting a drink, Red. Ichigo looked at him like nothing was wrong. It's Renji, and I mean, why aren't you locked up in a cell? The red-haired lieutenant calmed down enough to ask the real questions. Too bad Ichigo wasn't mature enough to answer properly. Oh that, well, I broke out. Or maybe he was mature enough to speak the truth. Then why? Just why are you out in public? Ikkaku and Yumichika were too wrapped up in this conversation to interrupt them. I repeat, Red. I'm getting a drink. Ichigo took another sip of his alcoholic beverage. Dealing with this guy was mentally exhausting. Fuck it. Renji pulled up a chair and sat next to the orange nuisance. Personally, he didn't believe Ichigo had done anything wrong, plus, he was technically off duty right now. His two friends from the 11th Division sat down with them. Alright, I need to say this now, or I'll never get another chance. Ichigo put his drink down and pointed at the redhead. You have awesome tattoos. Renji spit his drink out, almost choking. Seriously, how cool does that look? He said, pointing at the tribal-like tattoos. Wait, you like my tattoos? Renji asked. People often made fun of his ink, saying it looked ridiculous on him. Rukia frequently made a point of it, much to his embarrassment. I mean, I would never get inked, but they look great on you. Speaking of which, I noticed that Hisagi guy had tattoos. Is there a parlor around here or something? Ichigo asked with complete seriousness. I did this mostly myself. I think Shuhei did the same, Renji explained. How is old 69? Is his shoulder still annihilated? Ichigo grinned, remembering the little skirmish they had with the poor lieutenant. Yeah, Captain Onohana had to knock him out to stop the pain and let her operate. I don't know what that attack was you used on him was, but I would hate to be on the receiving end of it. There was still so much they all didn't know about this Ichigo character. At the moment, he wasn't a threat to Soul Society if he was taking it upon himself to deal with the hollows that trespassed. However, his allegiances still remains to be seen. I should probably send him something. Do they have card stores or gift shops here in Seireitei? Ichigo asked, while all three Shinigami looked like he was crazy. I'll take that as no. So Ichigo, I heard guys with Ikai in their name are tough warriors. Ikkaku began. You're not coming on to me, are you? Ichigo bluntly asked, making the bald-headed officer pop a vein and glare at him. No, I'm asking how strong you are. Ikkaku yelled. Wait, you're not interested in me like that. Am I so ugly? Ichigo sighed dramatically before busting out laughing. Listen, I don't know exactly how strong I am. For the past several years I've been killing your run-of-the-mill hollows, so I've never really gotten to test my power against a real challenge. If I went up against, say, a captain, I don't know exactly how that fight could turn out. The group continued to drink while they talked about random stuff. Eventually they got Renji too drunk, and he had to leave. Ikkaku, you have, go back your cell. I'll get in trouble. He slurred out, mumbling something about his strict captain. Sure, Red, I'll get right on that, Ikkaku lied smoothly. He was just a little buzzed. He left the bar, deciding to go look for his Zanpakuto, hoping he would run into more easy-going people like those three he met tonight. Too bad luck wasn't on his side. What are you doing out of your cell? Ikkaku turned to see one of the captains who helped capture him earlier. Toshiro Hitsugaya didn't seem all that surprised that he escaped and sounded more interested with how he escaped. If he recalled, he was being guarded by Hinamori. Momo. Yes, what about my adorable little jailer? Ikkaku smirked at him as the shorter captain unsheathed his sword in a rush. What did you do to her? Toshiro shouted, holding back his rage. If this bastard hurt her in any way, he would personally execute him here and now. I put her to rest, Ikkaku said without even thinking. Or perhaps it was the alcohol that made him say something so stupid. Toshiro didn't even hesitate to attack him, starting with viciously trying hack and slash at the Orange Menace. Hey, just calm down for a tick. Ikkaku dodged each of his attacks by leaping backwards. Unfortunately, his back hit a wall, and he just narrowly slid out of the way from getting stabbed through the heart. Look, kid, can you just stop, please? Ikkaku tried to plead with him again. But calling the youngest Shinigami captain a kid just pissed said captain off even more. Don't make me fight back. His mood suddenly turned darker as he held up his fists in a fighting pose. Silence. The air suddenly grew cold as Toshiro was about to release his Zanpakuto, or would have if it wasn't for the sudden appearance of Captain Kairaku, standing between them with both swords drawn to keep both combatants at bay. Whoa, hold up there, youngsters. Now what's this all about? The kimono-wearing captain asked. He started it, Ikkaku tattled, pointing at Hitsugaya. Kairaku chuckled before looking over at his fellow captain for answers. He broke out of his cell. I was merely recapturing him. Toshiro looked away, embarrassed for the real reason he was attacking. Look, Toshiro, Ikkaku began. It's Captain Hitsugaya, he barked out. My mouth sometimes says stupid stuff without my permission. I didn't kill your girlfriend. I meant to say I put her to sleep with a harmless Kaido. She's resting peacefully back in my cell, he explained with complete seriousness, scoffing at the skeptical look on the Shinigami's face. If you don't believe me, go check. This kimono-wearing guy can keep me company until then. Toshiro disappeared in a flash of high-speed movement, leaving Ikkaku alone with the other captain. At the risk of getting attacked again, I know your name. Very courteous, I like that. Shunsui Kairaku, captain of the 8th Division. He introduced with a tip of his straw hat. I'm sure you've already been told who I am, but I'll say it anyway. Ichigo Kurosaki, Jedi Knight. He couldn't help but snicker at the title he used this time. You're probably going to arrest me now, he sighed. Probably. Kairaku's hand gripped one of his swords. Then I guess we got a good old-fashioned Mexican standoff. Ichigo frowned, seeing the joke go right over the other's head. Really? Are you Shinigami that out of touch? Just then a small black butterfly landed on the captain's outstretched hand. Ah, perfect timing, Toshiro. Kairaku relaxed and started to walk away. Are you coming? You've just been cleared of all charges, and the other captains wish to meet you. Sounds charming. Ichigo went along with him for 2 reasons. 1, Kairaku seemed trustworthy, and 2, he was curious to meet the other captains. Captains meeting. Head Captain Yamamoto stood at the end of the line of captains. He was eager to start this meeting, but mostly he was curious to meet this boy that Toshiro had an interest in. This Ichigo Kurosaki was supposedly a soul of the Rukin district, and had been for about a decade. And in that time he found a Zanpakuto, learned the Shinigami arts, and started eliminating hollows in the Rukin faster than they could detect them. Such a feat seemed impossible. But if what his former student was telling him was true, then he would like to see the boy that made the impossible happen. Well, isn't this a fancy place? Voice from the other side of the double doors said, interrupting the silence in the room. The doors opened and Captain Kairaku walked, assuming his position with the other captains. In walked a person whom half of them had already met. Soifon glared at him. Hitsugaya gave him a thankful stare. Byakuya didn't even acknowledge him. Anohana and Aizen gave him a welcoming smile, while Jin simply grinned in his usual way. And the rest simply stared at him curiously. I must say this wasn't what I was expecting, Kamamura said aloud. Ichigo turned to see a large captain wear some sort of bucket helmet to hide his face. He thought about making a remark, but held his tongue, knowing that everyone had something to hide. This guy's must be a physical appearance. I have to agree. There doesn't seem to be anything special about this boy, Kuratsuchi said. Holy shit, is that your face? Ichigo pointed at the captain of Squad 12 animatedly. This captain had his face painted like something even a scary clown would have nightmares of. You look like the Joker's long-lost brother. Such insolence, Mayuri glared at the boy. Why so serious, Ichigo mocked. Enough. You are Ichigo Kurosaki, correct? Yamamoto interrupted. Yes, I am he. Ichigo brought his attention to the old man at the end of this line of captains. So that must be the head captain. Did I say that aloud? Then you have our utmost gratitude. Some of the captains were stunned that Yamamoto was openly praising this criminal for his actions. Yukitake has brought it to my attention that the laws which forbid souls of the Rukin from fighting hollows have been changed long ago. Therefore you have done no wrong. Wait, what about the theft of a Zanpakuto? Soifan interrupted, not wanting this flirting creep to get away scot-free. Not after how he humiliated her during his interrogation. We checked into that. All missing and stolen Zanpakuto from the last 20 years have been accounted for, Yukitake added. Wherever Ichigo got his Zanpakuto, it wasn't from the Seireitei. I told you I found it stuck in rock. I didn't steal anything. Ichigo glared at the captain of the 2nd Division. He didn't like being called a thief and liar. Speaking of my Zanpakuto, can I have it back, please? Jashiro Yukitake reached behind him and pulled out the rusted antique-looking sword in its beat-up sheath along with the boy's black cloak and handed it to Ichigo. Ah, perfect, and now. He grinned sinisterly and reached into his cloak pocket aggressively. Everyone tensed, thinking he was going to attack them. But he simply pulled out a chocolate bar, unwrapped it, and started eating. Any further questions, Your Honor? The orange teenager asked with a mouth full of chocolate. Hitsugaru rolled his eyes at the distinct lack of manners in front of the head captain. Why have you taken it upon yourself to eliminate hollows on your own? Yamamoto asked the big question on everyone's mind. Ichigo stopped eating his candy and looked at the old man with complete seriousness in his brown eyes. Because no one else will, Ichigo said softly. We do deploy Shinigami to deal with the hollow threat, Byakuya interrupted. That was the first thing he said through this whole meeting. He just didn't like how this Kurosaki brat was implying that they weren't doing their job. Yes, you do. But unfortunately a lot of souls are swallowed by those things before your little foot soldiers even get there, slowed down by paperwork and sheer lack of urgency. I doubt a noble like you would understand what it's like to be alone in the dark, hearing nothing but screaming and chewing. Then praying to whatever god can hear you that you won't be the next course. Ichigo glared at Captain Kuchiki, whose face remained impassive. Like he could understand how people in the world outside of the Seireitei had to live. Not to mention, it's pretty much a dog-eat-dog world deep in the Rukin district. I can't tell you how many thugs, gangs and murderers I've had to put down. We're sorry about the poor living conditions, but we simply don't have enough soldiers to fully monitor such a vast world. Anohana tried to perhaps excuse the decline of the Rukin to lack of Shinigami. Sorry? That's all you have to say? You let the Rukin fall to pieces and you're sorry? Ichigo turned his heated stare on the captain of the 4th Division. Unknown to him, he was starting to lose his tight control that he had on his Ryatsu. Yamamoto actually opened his eyes, finally getting an understanding of his power, while some of them were honestly shocked with the amount of strength this boy seemed to possess. Up till now they were under the assumption that he was merely as strong as a seated officer. But now with how heavy the air was getting, it seemed he was far stronger than that. Perhaps even captain level. Kenpachi grinned like a maniac at the prospect. This kid could present for a decent battle. You're absolutely right. We shouldn't be making excuses, Yukitake said, trying to defuse this quickly escalating situation. The boy quickly regained control of his Ryatsu, with an angry huff, going back to eating his candy bar to calm himself down. Any other questions? It's late, and I'd like to get home and sleep. Ichigo wasn't in the mood anymore to be playful. How are you eliminating hollows as fast as my men can detect them? Kuratsuchi asked. The hollows appear, and then are destroyed before we can assign someone to deal with it. How is that possible? The hollow sensing abilities of this boy would have to be far beyond that of his technology, and that was a difficult pill to swallow for a guy that strived for the best. Oh, well, that's a secret. Maybe I'll tell you someday. Ichigo smiled at the face-painted captain, who just stared him down hatefully. Okay, so maybe Ichigo could still be playful. The real reason why he didn't tell them how he can sense hollows probably would have him executed on the spot. So you can't blame a guy for holding his tongue when his life is on the line. Where did ya get the threads? Jin Ikamaru asked with his, practically trademark, smile, referring to the very modern world white t-shirt, jeans and Converse shoes Ichigo wore. Wow, you're a creepy one. Underground markets is where I get my stuff. Apparently some of your Shinigami smuggle stuff from the human world. clothing, toys, videos, televisions, and sell them to these underground markets, the orange teenager said nonchalantly. All that talk about us failing in our duties, and you let an underground market run loose. Soifon commented, pointing out the boy's hypocrisy. Oh blah, Ichigo blew a raspberry at her. Please, they just sell living world stuff as a commodity. I've investigated them, and they're harmless. The only reason they're underground is because they're worried noble families like his might take away their cool swag, he said with a nod in Byakuya's direction. That will be all for now. Dismissed. The head captain ordered, growing weary of this whole thing. He figured the matter of Ichigo's true strength could be dealt with another time. There was also the matter of why Ichigo looked so familiar. Yet he couldn't place his finger on where he saw the resemblance before. I hope the next time we meet it will be on the battleground, Kenpachi said, walking past the boy. I look forward to it, Ichigo remarked sarcastically, not exactly eager to fight this obvious psychopath. The next to stop and make a comment to him was surprisingly Byakuya. You're wrong to assume I don't know about the conditions of the Rukan district, was all the stoic captain said before leaving without another word. Ichigo was the last to leave the meeting hall, where he was confronted by Captain Ukitake outside. Ichigo, I want to express our sincerest apologies, the white-haired captain said sympathetically. It was wrong to arrest you on no true legal grounds. It's fine, really. I always wanted to take a trip to the Seireitei and see how much better the Shinigami are living than the poor souls they send here. Ichigo smiled grimly. Now I know. Let this be a token of our appreciation for your work. Ukitake pulled a strange item from his pocket. It looked like a wooden pentagonal-shaped emblem with a skull and X carved into it. What's that? Ichigo looked at the strange emblem in his hand. It's called a combat pass. Basically, it's like a badge we give to agents of the Gaudi 13 who are not the conventional Shinigami, he explained, holding it up for Ichigo to see. It signifies that you're affiliated with us, and it can also detect nearby hollows. That's great and all, but I'm not exactly sure I want to be affiliated with this organization. Plus, I already have a sort of sixth sense for detecting hollows. Ichigo eyed the badge suspiciously. There was something about it that didn't seem right. This combat pass sounded like something they would rarely give out, and yet Ukitake seemed to have one readily on hand, which was odd. Ichigo turned and began to walk away with a wave when realization hit him. On second thought, I think I'll keep it just in case, he said, plucking the badge out of Ukitake's open hand. It had occurred to Ichigo that they were letting him go way too easily. Here he was a person in possession of a Zanpakuto with obvious power, and they were just leaving him to his own devices. If that were true, they would be incredibly stupid. Thanks, Ukitake. See ya around. The captain smiled pleasantly at him as he pocketed the badge and made to leave. The Gaudi 13 may be stupid in taking care of the Rukan, but they were not the same for potential threats like him. He wouldn't put it past them to put a tracking device in the badge, so they could follow his every move. Let them. Meanwhile, Aizen sat in a chair leaning his head on his hand, while he watched from a monitor screen the whole exchange between Ichigo and Ukitake. He didn't bother to suppress a smirk when he saw Ichigo willingly take the combat pass. Quite a character that boy is, isn't he, Captain Aizen? Jin commented, seemingly appearing from the shadows. Indeed. Although I must say I'm disappointed that I didn't get a chance to see his full power. Aizen was hoping that Ichigo Kurosaki would get into a battle after he escaped his cell. He didn't count on Ukitake finding a loophole to clear the boy of all charges. Maybe you should have killed your little lieutenant. That would have certainly put Toshiro in a rage. Jin continued to smile despite talking about framing someone for murder. Momo still has her uses, for now at least, Aizen said, like he was talking about a tool to be used and not a person. His smirk reappeared when he watched Ichigo on the screen walk by Rukia Kuchiki and begin to talk. A plan to get Ichigo to reveal his true power started to form in his head. With Ichigo, he had nearly reached the exit of this fortified city when he walked past a familiar Shinigami shrimp. Howdy, shorty, Ichigo said, tipping an invisible hat. What are you doing? Rukia was shocked to see him out and about with no alarm raised or Shinigami officers chasing him. You're like the third person to ask me that tonight. I'm going home. I was cleared by your captain, shorty, Ichigo said smoothly. She sighed in relief, hearing her captain had saved Ichigo from imprisonment. Well, that's good. However, there's just one thing. Rukia closed her eyes for a moment and smirked. What's that? Ichigo was suddenly kicked hard in the stomach and sent skidding back a few yards. Don't call me shorty, strawberry boy. Ichigo coughed for a moment and replaced his frown with a grin of his own. Oh, I like you already. He chuckled, handing her a peach-flavored lollipop. Come visit us sometime. Ichigo winked at her before leaving. Such a strange boy. Rukia said to herself, while watching him disappear in the distance and pocketing the candy he gave her. Ichigo plus girlfriend plus humans plus cat = invasion. Where's this trump card of yours supposed to meet us? Ishida asked, walking next to Sato and Tatsuki. They were currently on a mission in the Soul Society to rescue the Shinigami Rukia Kuchiki from her fate. The black cat named Yoruichi led them through the streets of the Rukin, attempting to locate a certain ally that she believed would help them. He's not supposed to meet us. I'm trying to lock onto his spirit energy, the black cat said, attempting to locate her trainee's presence, which was difficult. Ironic that she was the one to teach him how to control it. Little did she know he would become an expert so fast. There he is, she announced, quickening her pace, while the 3 humans trailed behind her. It's about time, Tatsuki grumbled. They arrived at a crowded restaurant and walked through the sea of people to stand in front of a table where a man sat alone, wearing a black cloak and skull mask that was pushed upward slightly so the fellow could chow down on the bowl of noodles in his hand. I heard you got caught by the Goaty 13, so why do you still wear the costume if they know who you are now? Yoruichi asked, jumping up on the table. Yoruichi, my favorite kitty cat, Ichigo explained, putting his food down and grabbing her before she could jump away. He removed his mask and nuzzled his face into her soft fur. Oh, and to answer your question, the costume makes me look badass. Hey you, what is your name? Tatsuki asked, rather rudely, getting in his face with her hands on her hips. Ichigo Kurosaki, what's it to you? He answered her, not liking the fact that she was so close. Her eyes widened at that, her suspicions finally confirmed. Do you remember me? She asked. No, who are you? Ichigo noticed her downcast head and tightening of her fist. You don't remember the little girl who always kicked your ass in karate? She looked at him sadly, and then it finally hit him. Oh, Tatsuki, he said, glomping onto her with a laugh. She was so startled by his behavior that she stood there frozen, until she came to and jabbed him in the gut. Oh, you're strong. What are they feeding you back home? He chuckled. So who are your friends? Uryu Ishida, the last Quincy, he introduced while pushing up his glasses. He gave Ichigo a skeptically look, like he wasn't at all impressed with him. A Quincy, that's pretty cool. I heard about your people. Condolences. Ichigo thought it was awesome meeting an actual living Quincy. What about you, big man? He looked over at the tall Hispanic. Sato, he said quietly. Strong, silent type, huh? That's cool, I can dig that. But I'm gonna call you Chad. He smiled up at the big guy. Sato didn't make a remark about the name. He seemed to be okay with it. Ichigo, the reason we are here is because we need your help, Yoruichi interrupted. Oh really? So what's new, pussycat? He grinned at her, sitting back down. Rukia Kuchiki, she's in big trouble. Ichigo blinked and looked seriously grim for a moment before grinning and picking up his drink. So what did the shrimp do? Ichigo chuckled, taking a sip of his beverage. She was framed for several crimes, and her sentence is execution, Yoruichi told him, causing Ichigo to spit out his drink in surprise. Are you fucking serious? Ichigo looked flabbergasted. As a heart attack, Yoruichi's tail flicked back and forth at her words. So you need my help to bust her out along with this ragtag group of humans. When you say it like that, it seemed ridiculous, and only a fool would go along with something like that. All right, I'm in. But on one condition. I'm bringing my girl with me. Why do you want her to come? Yoruichi asked. Because she could use the confidence booster. Plus, you don't know this kitty cat. But she has some really cool powers now, Ichigo said with a grin. After paying his check, the group followed him out of the restaurant, where he was leading them to his house to pick up his girlfriend. After that, Yoruichi said they would be going to a friend of hers and Ichigo's who could help them get into the Seireitei. On their way, there a very loud, obnoxious fellow, riding an actual pig, came barreling past them, or would have if Ichigo didn't suddenly clothesline him off the pig with his arm. Ganju! Ichigo yelled after the man came tumbling to a halt. Ah, Ichigo, sir. I didn't see you there. The guy got up and bowed, terrified. How many times has your sister told you not to ride without a helmet? Ichigo said, getting progressively louder. The group just watched the interaction in stunned silence. I must have forgotten it back home. Yeah, that's right, Ganju said, while sweating profusely with each step Ichigo took towards him. The orange-haired teenager stuck his face terrifyingly close to the foolish man's, as his voice became slightly distorted. Then why don't you go back home and get it, or do I have to tell her that you were riding without it? No. Ganju nearly wet himself with how scary Ichigo had become. He then took off running, followed closely by his hog. Shall we move on? Ichigo turned and smiled at the group, freaking them all the hell out. They just quietly kept up with him. Oriheim should be home by now, he said offhandedly. What did you just say? Tatsuki asked darkly. I said Orihime should be. He didn't get to finish because Tatsuki hauled off and punched him in the face, sending him rolling across the street to bounce off a wooden building. What the hell, Wonder Woman? Ichigo stood back up, dusting himself off. That hurt, but it wasn't enough to seriously injure. Tatsuki, what are you doing? The Quincy asked. Don't you dare joke about her. The girl marched over top, punch him again, but was held back by Chad. I wasn't joking. In case you're unaware, I'm living with Orihime and now here in the Rukin district. Tatsuki seemed to calm down enough to question him. Orihime had died young, when she was 13, about 4 years after Ichigo died, and came here in a year after she became friends with Tatsuki. Ironically, it was an accident with a car very similar to how her brother died a year before. Ichigo explained how he found the auburn-haired girl wandering the streets of the Rukin. He learned her name, the fact that she lived in his hometown, and was looking for her brother in this vast afterlife. Ichigo agreed to help her find her brother, and the two have been living together ever since. He didn't think it was wise to tell Tatsuki that for the past year they have been sleeping with each other. He punch actually hurt. Take me to her, she ordered. I was until you almost knocked my head off, Ichigo said, leading them once again to his home. When they reached the small house, he stuck his head in through the front door. Honey, I'm home. Ichigo? Everyone was surprised to see a busty, incredibly beautiful orange-haired girl wearing a red t-shirt and faded jeans walk out of the bedroom. She walked up to him, and they gave each other a peck on the cheek in greeting. What the hell is going on here? Tatsuki asked. It looks like a domestic partnership to me, Ishida commented, earning a quick glare from the female martial artist. Tatsuki, is that you? Orihime noticed the resemblance this older girl had to her friend back when she was alive. Yet it's me. She was about to hug her, but was stopped by Yoruichi. You two can catch up on the road. We need to leave now, the cat said, interrupting their moment. Where are we going? Orihime asked. I need you to come with me. We're taking a trip to the Seireitei, Ichigo explained enthusiastically. Put on your good shoes, we need to leave like right now. After they left the house, Orihime and Tatsuki decided to talk and catch up on what was going on with each other the past few years. Tatsuki told her about how she met the ghost of her older brother recently, and how Rukia sent him to the Soul Society. Orihime had no idea that she was lying. She didn't have the heart to tell her friend that her deceased brother had become a hollow and attacked her looking for his sister to devour. Rukia had saved Tatsuki's life and purified Sora Inao. That's why she was here, trying to save the Shinigami from an unjust execution. While they were talking up ahead, Ichigo decided to ask the human and Quincy why they were here. Chad told of how he had adopted a strange bird and was soon attacked by an invisible force that kept causing accidents all around him. It turned out that the bird was actually the soul of a little boy that was trapped by a hollow, and said despicable creature used the child to lure victims. Rukia, with the help of Chad, dispatched the hollow known as Shrieker and sent his wicked soul to hell. Ishida, on the other hand, started out his relationship with Rukia by threatening her and telling her to leave the town. He even went so far as to challenge her by using bait that lured in an infestation of hollows. In the end, they summoned a large creature known as Jillian. By sheer luck, both Quincy and Shinigami were able to work together and drive it back into the portal it came from. Ishida was here to repay her and find out more about the Shinigami he claimed to hate. So why exactly do you hate the Shinigami? Was it because of the whole genocide thing 200 years ago? Because you weren't even born yet? Ichigo asked, trying to get some insight on this. He personally didn't hate the Shinigami. He just thought the Gaudy 13 was incompetent as a whole and hated the decisions they made. My grandfather believed that both Shinigami and Quincy can work together. But he was wrong, since the Shinigami are too arrogant to want to work with anyone. He trying not to sound too angry. Well, to be fair, he was right. You and Rukia were able to work well together. If you ask me, you sound like you're speaking from some old hurt that won't go away. Ichigo noticed how the Quincy flinched, but hit it well. He must have hit the nail on the head, because the guy wouldn't speak on this anymore. To Ichigo, the whole Quincy extermination seemed ridiculous and yet suspicious. It seemed odd that neither side could reach a compromise when it could have been achieved so easily. Uryu's grandfather was correct in that both could work together. Quincy's could fight hollows and weaken them, while the Shinigami just deliver the killing blow and purify the soul. Easy, right? There were a lot of holes in that historical event that Ichigo made a mental note to look into at some point. Why do you wish to help Rukia? That was the first question out of Chad's mouth he heard all day. Well, I like her. She was kind to Orihime and me. Rukia wasn't at all like the nobles I heard about. She was down to earth, and even helped me out with my Kaido. Ichigo and Orihime were actually surprised when Rukia took him up on his offer. She visited them every week for the following 6 months after he was arrested and released. Rukia would often blow off time with her family and Byakuya to come see them in the Rukan, where Urahime would bring her to where she worked during the day. While Ichigo patrolled the districts and eliminated hollows and criminal activity, Urahime set up a council center with a group of others to help people and children deal with their recent deaths and help them find their deceased family members. Most of the work was done to help others reunite with their loved ones, but also Urahime was hoping that she would one day find her brother this way. Rukia was actually impressed and moved by what they were doing and volunteered to help out whenever she could. She even promised to talk to her brother Byakuya about this and try to get him to support more of these centers being set up throughout the Soul Society. It was safe to say that Rukia Kuchiki quickly became a dear friend to Ichigo and Urahime, and they would do anything they could to save her from her fate. Alright, here we are. Yoruichi announced to a home with a large banner being held by 2 statues. I haven't seen Ikkaku in a while. Wonder if she missed me. Ichigo walked right past the guards who just nodded their heads at Ichigo and Yoruichi while eyeing the others suspiciously. Yo Ikkaku, you up? Are you drinking again? He shouted, walking through the house like he owned the place. Ichigo, keep it down, someone shouted from the room next to him. The door slid open to surprisingly a woman. The clueless humans thought Ikkaku was actually a man. So how's my favorite customer? Oh, I'm fine, though I didn't come here for an order. Ichigo sat down, pointing toward Yoruichi, who explained the situation and how they needed entry into the Seireitei. The fireworks expert laughed, saying she had just the thing while showing them outside. That thing's a cannon. I thought it was a chimney. Tatsuki exclaimed, looking up at the towering pillar. It doubles as both. This is how you're all getting in. I'm going to shoot you all through the barrier, Ikkaku Shiba explained, emphasizing it with her fist. Before anyone could say how crazy that sounded, Ichigo started laughing like a maniac while bouncing up and down. Oh yes, 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 yes. What are we waiting for? He shouted, running over to the cannon, as if to climb it only to get punched in the face by the one-armed fireworks master. Not so fast. You may have the control to form the cannonball, but the others don't yet. Ichigo just stuck his tongue out her while holding his bleeding nose. Later that night. Hey Tatsuki, Ichigo whispered, giving her a poke. Everyone had went to sleep after practicing to form the cannonball that would shield them tomorrow morning. Ichigo wanted to have a talk with his childhood friend in private for a bit, while everyone else was asleep. What is it? She asked, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. Take a walk with me, was all he needed to say before getting up and heading outside. Tatsuki quickly got up and followed after him. Once they were outside, he finally opened his mouth to say something. I just wanted to ask how my family is doing these days. He looked away as he asked. She was stunned for a moment while she stared at his back. What do you want me to say? Because I'd be lying if I said they're fine. They miss you greatly, both you and your mother. Tatsuki didn't tell Ichigo how Rukia saved his family from a despicable hollow called Grand Fisher, or how the Shinigami found out that it was the same hollow that originally killed Ichigo and his mother. It must have been a miracle that the 9-year-old boy wasn't consumed, but unfortunately his mother Masaki wasn't so lucky. She didn't tell him for 2 reasons. She didn't want him worrying over his still living family, and she couldn't bring herself to tell him that his mother's soul was devoured by a hollow. Tatsuki remembered Ichigo when he was a boy and his mother was his whole world. Who knows how badly it would devastate him to know what really happened. But do they endure? What Tatsuki didn't realize was the Ichigo already knew the truth. He had repressed the memory for a couple years, but when he was eavesdropping on a group of Shinigami, he heard them talk about a hollow called Grand Fisher that had yet to be slain. When they described what it did and looked like, all the horrible memories came rushing back to him so fast he couldn't stop himself from throwing up. It was the soothing voice of his Zanpakuto that managed to calm him down and break Ichigo out of his despair. Ever since that day, he stopped searching for his mother's soul in the Rukan, and kept his special senses alert in case that bastard Grand Fisher ever got the balls to go hunting in the Soul Society. Yeah, they still move forward. Tatsuki looked away to keep the tears at bay. That's good. I was worried about them, thanks. He walked past her, giving her a grateful squeeze on her shoulder as he went back inside. Both of them thought it better to keep the mouths shut, because the ugly truth is sometimes too much to bear. The next morning, everyone stood in the base of the cannon, one hand on the orb that would form the protective cannonball that would also pierce the barrier surrounding the Seireitei. No one except Ichigo managed to get a good night's sleep, while knowing how dangerous this mission was. Let's blow this thing already, Ichigo shouted, getting impatient. Give Ikkaku the chance to fire at Ichigo. Yoruichi scolded him. Are we absolutely sure this is the only way? Uryu asked, starting to get second thoughts about this. Ready to fire, Ikkaku shouted from the outside. Hang on and good luck. HM. You know, it just occurred to me that I have this pass thing the Gotai gave me that's supposed to grant me entry into the Seireitei, Ichigo said nonchalantly. What? Everyone shouted. Too late. This is more fun. Fire. Everyone was about to start protesting when the cannon suddenly fired, launching them through the sky. You're a dick. Tatsuki glared at Ichigo while they all sat inside the transparent orb. Ichigo clutched his sides. He couldn't stop laughing. Oh my god, the look on all your faces. He wheezed out, trying to get air in. Everyone except Oriheim and Chad just glared at him. Fancy that, we're coming up to the barrier. They all turned their heads to see the Seireitei getting closer by the second. Geronimo. And with that, the colliding with a resounding explosion that could be seen across the Seireitei. A few minutes later. Ha ha ha. Yeah, Ichigo laughed as he rolled over on his side in the crater his impact formed with Oriheim wrapped protectively in his arms. The explosion ended up separating them all, and he grabbed the first person that came to mind and used his body and spirit energy as a shield when they hit the ground. Are you okay, Ichigo? Oriheim stood up, coughing a bit from the dirt and dust kicked up from the impact. Yeah, I'm fine, not a scratch, Ichigo groaned as he stretched and popped his back a few times. See, totally fine. Well, if it isn't Ichigo Kurosaki. They both turned to see Ikkaku and Yumichika of the 11th Division. Oh hey, it's the two lovebirds, Ichigo commented. What did you say? The bald one shouted. Well, you two are always joined at the hip like a married couple, Ichigo argued back. He's got us there. Yumichika smirked, tossing his hair back with a flick of his head. So what's with the flashy entrance, Ichigo? Ikkaku asked, getting down to the point. Oh, nothing much. Me and some others are just breaking into the Seireitei to rescue Miss Kuchiki. He explained like it was a normal day for him. Wait, I thought you were on our side, Ikkaku said as he approached the intruders. Whoever said I was on your side was terribly misinformed. I'm on my side, which happens to be the right side to be on. Ichigo smirked, seeing the bald Shinigami looked ready to fight. He was just itching to test his abilities against a Shinigami again. Do I have time to do my lucky dance? Ikkaku grinned. Knock yourself out. Ichigo pulled out a cherry lollipop and stuck it in his mouth and handed a lemon-flavored one to Oriheim while they waited for the bald Shinigami to finish his dance. Another few minutes later. Shall I start the count? Ichigo looked down at his defeated opponent. Ikkaku laid collapsed on the ground, bruised and bleeding. Though what hurt the most was his pride. After releasing his Shikai, all he could do was put a few scratches on his opponent, while Ichigo didn't even release his Zanpakuto, and quickly brought him down with several well-placed cuts and strikes from his Akuma Yubai Kaido attack. Tell me, who trained you? The bald Shinigami asked, clutching onto the leg of the one who defeated him. I don't really have a teacher. I learned from a few people. But I guess the closest person to that would be Yoruichi Shihoin, he admitted while the other's eyes widened. You win, so I guess I'll tell ya, Rukia Kuchiki is being held in the White Tower of Repentance, awaiting her execution, he said before passing out. Thanks. Now where did my little Oriheim wander off to? Ichigo looked around before deciding. She knew how to take care of herself and continued on. During his second journey through the Seireitei, he ran into a poor meek member of Squad 4 named Hanataro Yamada being picked on by a group of obnoxious Shinigami. If there was one thing Ichigo hated, it was bullies. So after swiftly dealing with those assholes, he introduced himself to Hanataro and found out that the little dude knew where Rukia was being held and wanted to help him rescue her. Along the way, they also found Oriheim being harassed by some other seated officer. He didn't care to learn the name and mercilessly knocked the guy out cold. They decided to hide in the sewers and spend the night until the heat was off a bit. And while healing the few wounds they had, luckily Hanataro knew his way around down there. The next morning, the adventure began again. Oh goody stairs, Ichigo said sarcastically, seeing the long flight of steps they had to climb to get closer to their destination. Seriously, have you guys not ever heard of an escalator? What's an escalator? Hanataro asked. I rest my case. Ichigo continued his trek up the top. Can we take a rest up at the top, Ichigo? Oriheim asked. Yeah, I could go for one of those too. Seriously, who needs this many stairs? Unfortunately, luck was not on their side. A vast, heavy spiritual pressure washed over them, making Yamada and Oriheim freeze up in shock. What is this? Oriheim had to steady herself from falling over. Ichigo. They looked up to see a scary-looking Shinigami captain sitting on the roof of one of the tall buildings. It looks like we get to have that fight after all. Kenpachi, you freaking lunatic. The old man Yamamoto let you off the leash. Ichigo grinned up at the captain of the 11th Division, seemingly unaffected by his Ryatsu. I'm not so sure I want to fight you though. In response, Kenpachi jumped down to land with a crash in front of the orange-haired teenager. Ichigo was completely unfazed by this intimidation tactic. Is that so? The larger man grinned. I'll make you a deal, Kenpachi. Ichigo took a step back while pushing his stunned girlfriend forward. You swing your sword, and if Orihime can block your strike, then I don't have to fight you. And what if I cut through her like paper? Kenpachi asked, thinking it was odd for Ichigo to use a girl as a shield. Then I have a reason to fight you. Orihime was sweating bullets at this point. Do it, Kenny, said a little pink-haired girl on Zaraki's shoulder. Ichigo, I don't think I can do this, she muttered. Relax, you can do this. Use your power, he whispered into her ear. I have the utmost confidence in you. Ichigo smiled at her, reassuring her. Are you ready, girl? Kenpachi pointed his beat-up-looking sword at her. Growing impatient, he immediately struck at her. Santen Kesshon. Orihime closed her eyes, bracing herself. A large shockwave erupted in front of her. But that's all. She opened her eyes, seeing her defensive shield in front of her damaged and cracked, but still intact and blocking Zaraki's sword. Huh? So I guess she could block it, Kenpachi remarked, sounding a little surprised. Ichigo starting clapping animatedly. Ha! I told you, baby. Ichigo embraced her from behind in a tight hug. Now run along with Hanataro. I'm gonna fight this guy, he said, giving her a kiss on the cheek. But you said, Orihime wondered why he risked her life if he intended to fight Kenpachi. That was just to boost your confidence, and it worked. You successfully blocked a strike from the strongest fighter in Soul Society. He tapped on butt and stepped past her between her and Zaraki. Hold your head up high, Haim. She gave him a quick teary-eyed thank before running off with Yamada. The girl on Kenpachi's shoulder also ran off in anticipation of the battle that was about to take place. Remarkable woman, isn't she? He chuckled. I knew you couldn't resist a fight. You're just like me, you live to fight. It was Zaraki's turn to chuckle. Well, that's where you're wrong, my fine crazy-ass friend, Ichigo spoke, while slowly unsheathing his rusted antique-looking sword. I won't deny that I enjoy the thrill and ecstasy of an awesome sword fight. It's the victory and peace it brings that I truly live for. He grinned as he held his sword out. As it stands, I've never got a chance to compare my abilities against a captain, so don't disappoint. Kenpachi responded by laughing like a maniac. Yes, that's the spirit. The large captain swung his sword to collide with Ichigo's, sending the unprepared teen flying into the wall. Of course you realize, this means war, Ichigo strained out, while cratered in the wall. Don't tell me you were all talk. Kenpachi watched as his opponent pulled himself from the wall. I think I'm going to have to use my Shikai on you, Ichigo smirked. Then do it. It's just I've never shown it to anyone before, and it's really cool, so excuse me if I'm getting a little excited, Ichigo said, while bouncing on the soles of his feet. He pointed his sword into the air and said the release command for his Zanpakuto. Lead us into the light. Oh no, Kishi. Ichigo's entire sword began to glow with an ominous white light. March of the King's Knights. Ichigo held his now glowing sword and tossed it high in the air above them. The Zanpakuto exploded in a shower of light, causing Kenpachi to shield his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, dozens of swords rained down across the whole courtyard where they stood, but none of them were aimed at Zaraki. Each sword was stuck in the ground around them, and each one looked exactly the same. The antique rusted blade was gone, and in its place was a beautiful and intricately carved gold-hilted blade with gilded angel wings for a guard, and what looked like a human eye in the center. Kenpachi grinned, seeing all the copies of the sword around him. Is this your Shikai? A bunch of swords anybody can use? He asked, reaching for a nearby sword, only to have his hand violently burned by getting a little too close to it. Not just anybody. All these swords are for me to use, Ichigo grinned, while grabbing a nearby sword stuck in the ground. Let's start with an easy one, he said, charging toward Kenpachi, swinging his sword wildly at him. That's a good way to start out. Zaraki laughed, getting a few minor cuts. He retaliated by swinging his sword at Ichigo, but the orange teenager swiftly dodged each strike. Ichigo did a spin move with his sword, but much to his opponent's surprise, the sword transformed into a large spiked metal ball on a chain. He used the momentum to slam it into the captain's side, actually sending him flying a few yards. Wow, I actually knocked you back. Ichigo beamed with pride. What the hell happened to your sword? Kenpachi frowned, not liking weird abilities. He much preferred enemies with straightforward fighting styles like his own. Oh, nothing. This one just happens to be a mace in disguise. Ichigo chuckled, returning the weapon back into a sword. He then stuck it into the ground and grabbed another one that was close by. This one, however, is a little different. The gilded blade transformed into a long, deadly-looking black scythe. Throughout the battle, Ichigo would frequently swap swords with the many that were scattered about the area. Each one seemed to have a single unique ability or hidden form. I was almost like each blade had its own shikai, which seemed impossible for a single Zanpakuto to have that many different shikai forms. It doesn't matter how many different swords you use, they're not enough to take me down, Ichigo, Kenpachi said with a wide grin, nearly slicing Ichigo's head off. Luckily, Ichigo pulled off a move that Yoruichi taught him, and used Shumpo to move out of the way, while leaving his cloak behind for Kenpachi to cut. Well, how about 2 swords? Ichigo jumped back now in his white long-sleeved shirt and jeans, grabbing 2 copies of his shikai in each hand. He swung the left sword first, sending a wave of water to douse Zaraki and flood the entire courtyard. Next, Ichigo jumped and balanced himself on the hilt of another sword stuck in the floor, before swinging the right sword, sending a wave of electricity to fry the soaked Shinigami. What the hell are you made of? Ichigo was surprised that while electrocuted and smoldering, the captain still stood tall. My turn. Kenpachi was about to send a destructive wave with his sword at Ichigo, if the teenager didn't see that coming and threw his electric sword at the battle-crazed Shinigami. Zaraki, of course, batted the blade away, but Ichigo used the distraction to grab another gold angel-winged sword with his left hand. He then ran up to Kenpachi using the water sword he still had, and the new one he just grabbed, to blast the captain with water, and then freeze it solid using the other weapon. Let's see you get out of that, Ichigo smirked, while turning away from the icy pillar, only to get impaled through the stomach from behind. Gah, I didn't mean right now. He coughed up a bit of blood and jumped away to avoid another strike along with the falling ice. Kenpachi clawed his way out of the ice, revealing that his eye patch was removed, and with the removal of it, a huge outpour of Ryatsu came with it. And you told me not to hold back. When you were holding back all along, Ichigo chuckled nervously, while applying pressure to the hole in his stomach. The fight continued, this time much more one-sided. Every different weapon and every power his swords possessed all seemed to be useless against Kenpachi. Fighting the captain of the 11th Division was like fighting a hurricane, pointless and brutal. Even Ichigo's Akuma Yubai didn't slow down the brute, no matter how many organs and bones he smashed with the focused Kaido jab. Damn it, Ichigo grumbled, lying face down on the rubble covered in blood and wounds. Kenpachi frowned disappointed and started to walk away. Stand up, Ichigo, the voice of his Zanpakuto said in his mind. I can't. And even if I could, none of our swords will work on this guy. Ichigo continued to lay there broken and bleeding. There is one more sword you could try, the old man said. Ichigo opened his eyes and lifted his head up to stare at another gilded sword stuck in the ground a few yards away. That one, the new one we made a few months ago? Ichigo started to pull himself off the ground and onto his feet. He had yet to practice with that one yet, but now seemed like a good time to test it out. His Majesty is right, a different distorted voice said from within his mind. The new voice spat the title in a mocking tone. If you're not going to use me, then you might as well die using that badass new sword. Ichigo flinched, hearing the voice of the other side of his power. All right, let's give it a whirl. Ichigo stood fully and slowly walked over to the blade in the ground. You still want to fight, huh? Kenpachi asked, watching Ichigo make his way to another one of his swords. Always, Ichigo laughed, pulling the sword out and pointing it at Zaraki. This sword is a little new and untested, so try not to die. Both Kenpachi and the orange-haired teenager's bodies glowed with the ferocity of the Ryatsu they poured out. They both charged each other's swords in mid-swing. Getsuga Tensho. Ichigo's blade glowed with a blue light as a wave of raw power shot out in a perfect crescent. This blade was special as Ichigo, and the spirit of his Zanpakuto created it to be the best of all the swords his shikai produced, for now. There was an explosion when the two collided that destroyed the whole courtyard, and then silence. A few quiet moments later, laughter from the debris could be heard. Both Ichigo and Kenpachi laid on their backs out of commission. Both of them laughed with big childish grins on their faces. Hee hee, wow, that was fun, Ichigo commented, while coughing up blood. Was it good for you? I look forward to a rematch, Kenpachi chuckled despite the huge gash running diagonally from his shoulder to his hip. I'm gonna take a nap now. Wake me when someone comes for us. Hee hee, will do. Ichigo of course passed out right after Kenpachi from blood loss. Unbeknownst to them, someone was watching the whole fight take place. Head Captain Yamamoto had been quietly observing the battle that took place from atop a high building. He had already seen Zaraki in action before, so the captain's abilities weren't a surprise to him. But the power of Ichigo Kurosaki's Zanpakuto actually made his eyes widen for a moment. It seemed impossible for a single Zanpakuto to have so many different abilities. Entirely impossible. No other Shinigami in the history of the Soul Society ever displayed an ability even remotely similar to the boy's Ono Kishi. A Zanpakuto's form and powers were shaped and defined by the soul of its Shinigami master. So what kind of soul did Ichigo Kurosaki have that would create such a powerful and versatile Zanpakuto. He continued to ponder this as he turned and left the ruined courtyard. However, the head captain wasn't the only one that was observing the fight. Sasuke Aizen watched the entire thing through his monitor screens below his division quarters. In fact, he had been watching Ichigo closely ever since he first entered the Seireitei. When Ichigo first released his Zanpakuto, he naturally assumed that it must have been some sort of trick similar to his own Kyoka Suijutsu. But upon further studying of Ichigo's Ono Kishi, he was pleased to find it wasn't an illusionary type. Each of those blades held a different form and power, almost like the boy was a god of weapons. How interesting. Where does one get a power like that, I wonder? Aizen thought, his deviously clever mind already coming up with several different theories. Later. Mr. Wonka, can we stay in the chocolate room a little longer? Ichigo mumbled in his sleep. Someone flicked his nose, making him gasp and jump up wide awake. Who the hell? Relax, it's just me. Yoruichi sat next to him in her humanoid form, fully dressed. Oh hey Yoruichi, wait, you transform? Ah damn it, I missed it. Ichigo whined, rolling over on his side in a childish pout. You pervert, she said, poking him. I remember the first time I showed you my transformation. Don't think I'll let you see it again. She glared down at her student. If I recall, you tried to get with me. Oh come on, I was horny 16-year-old and had a super hot, naked, mocha-skinned bikini model in front of me. What was I supposed to do? Ichigo asked, rolling over to face her with an answer me look on his. But no, you had to tease me and say no to my marriage proposal. Save it for Orihime Romeo, she snickered, playfully bopping him on the head. You're welcome, by the way, Yoruichi said, pointing at his bandages. You're lucky I got to you before any officers did, or you'd be recovering in another cell right now. Yeah, thank you, Miss Flash Goddess. He waved his hand dismissively at her. So where is everybody else? Yoruichi filled him in on what happened with the others. For a while she had been following Sato, but had to leave him behind when he was unfortunately taken down by Captain Kairaku. Uryu and Tatsuki paired up and fought their way through the Seireitei, but got separated when the Quincy battled the mad captain of Squad 12 Mayuri Kuretsuchi. As far as she knew, Uryu won that fight, but was still taken prisoner afterward. Yoruichi had yet to find Tatsuki, but had a feeling that someone who was on their side was hiding her. What happened to Orihime and Hanataro? Ichigo asked seriously. He remembered them going on ahead to rescue Rukia, but wasn't sure what happened next. Byakuya and Yukitake were lying in wait for them. Yamada was arrested, but I haven't heard news of Orihime's capture. I bet anything Yukitake is protecting Orihime and keeping her hidden, she explained. And here I thought I couldn't trust him. Ichigo smiled softly, happy to be proven wrong after that suspicious incident with the combat pass. So now I have to bust out Uryu, Yamada, Chad, and Rukia. This just gets better and better. Actually, you won't. I noticed you're getting rusty, so we're going to train, she said with a smirk. What about the others? Ichigo didn't like leaving people to die. I think they'll be fine. Just let them sit tight for now until I can work on a plan. Yoruichi assured him that everything would be all right in the end. The only part that worried Ichigo was the aftermath. He figured they could probably hide out in the Rukin district, being that it was so big. But he doubted they could hide there forever. Hopefully his teacher would take that into account as well. 3 days later, Rukia stared at the giant firebird that would be the instrument of her execution in a few seconds. The only regrets she had were not understanding why she was framed. But most of all, she would regret not seeing the faces of those she had recently become friends with one last time. Ichigo. His face flashed in her mind, causing her eyes to open wide, just as the Sakyoku collided with her body, incinerating Rukia and the area around her. The flames cleared, revealing the victim of the fiery guillotine completely erased. It is done then. The head captain spoke aloud and turned to leave along with the rest of the captains and lieutenants that came to observe. Byakuya Kuchiki took one last look at where his adoptive sister once was. Something flashed in his eyes for a moment that one could call despair before it disappeared along with the last remnants of his late wife. He too turned to walk away from this execution scene. No one seemed to notice atop the tall wooden pyre sat an orange shaggy-haired teenager, sipping from a teacup with a plate in the other hand and a fresh pot of tea to his left. More tea, Alice? Ichigo said in a fake British accent. He turned to look at a shocked, wide-eyed Rukia, who sat next to him clutching a teacup in her small hands. What? What just happened? Rukia still wasn't sure what the hell was going. 1 second she was about to die, and the next she was sitting here with Ichigo pouring her a cup of tea. Well, I just saved your life, shrimp. Drink up. You're going to need the caffeine, Ichigo suddenly unleashed his Ryatsu upon the whole area, making those who were leaving after witnessing the execution stop in their tracks and turn to look back at the pyre in surprise. "Come on, people, did you really think I wasn't going to make a big spectacle?" he shouted down at everyone. "Ooh, the way you lot are glaring at me, you'd think I was the one committing an unjust execution. Let me guess. You're wondering how I got here without any of you noticing. How I saved Rukia so fast. Or perhaps you're wondering where I got the tea." He smirked down at them. "You idiot. What are you doing here?" Rukia yelled, clearly pissed off, but more angry that he was recklessly endangering his own life. "I told you, Shrimp. I'm saving your life. I apologize in advance for this," he said, grabbing her by the back of her collar and lifting her up like a mother cat carrying her young. "What are you all gawking at? Get him!" Soifan shouted, spurring everyone into action. "Hey Red, catch!" Ichigo suddenly threw Rukia face first across the Sokyoku hill, while she screamed the whole way. Renji jumped and caught her with surprising ease. "You idiot. You said you'd bring her here, not throw her." Renji yelled up at him. "Sorry, I'm kind of surrounded here, so get going," Ichigo ordered. Renji suddenly placed Rukia on his back and told her to hold on tight. He then took out a white hooded cloak that was big enough to cover both of them and put it on. "Now!" Yukitake and Kairaku shouted. At their signal, Tatsuki, Oriheim, Ishida, Yamada, and Chad jumped out of hiding, all wearing the same kind of cloak. They followed close to Renji, weaving in and out as they ran before splitting off in different directions, so their pursuers wouldn't know which of them was which or which one had Rukia. After that it was pandemonium. Yukitake and Kairaku fled and were chased by the head captain for assisting the criminals. The lieutenants of Squad 2, 1 and 4 attempted to chase after the group of cloaked invaders that tried to escape, but Ichigo appeared before them in a flash of high-speed movement. "You shall not pass," he said, slamming his sheathed sword on the ground. They all looked at him like he was crazy, and maybe he was. "Really? You don't even have to see that movie to get the reference, it's practically pop culture." "Whatever." Ichigo easily moved quick enough to bop each one of them on the head, effectively knocking all 3 of them out. He then threw his head back, barely dodging a kick to the head by the right pissed-off captain of Squad 2. "Well, hello to you too," Ichigo grinned at Soifan. "Silence, fool." She attempted to attack him again, but this time he was more prepared and grabbed her fist with his bare hand before it could land a hit on his face. "You know, I really enjoyed our first date. I wouldn't mind another one." Ichigo winked at her, making Soifan blush in both embarrassment and fury. "I think I know who trained you now. The way you dodged and your effectiveness at hiding your Ryatsu. Only a master could have taught you that." "It was her, wasn't it?" Soifan asked. "You guessed right, Shaolin. You've become very perceptive in my absence," Yoruichi said, appearing next to Ichigo. "Sorry to interrupt your little talk, but I need to burrow her for a moment." She vanished just as quickly as she came, this time with an irate former protege chasing after her. "Well, that takes care of her. What's next on the agenda?" Ichigo seemingly pulled his teacup out of thin air and took a sip. He noticed Byakuya Kuchiki approaching him with a look of annoyance in his eyes. "So are you going to be the one to ask me where I got the tea?" "Please do. It's an interesting story. Plus, I'd much rather talk with you than fight." "No more games," Byakuya said, drawing his Zanpakuto. "I will cut you down myself before bringing Rukia back here." "How about a cup of tea first?" Ichigo cut him off, pouring the pot into another cup. "You know, I have this strong feeling that I'm going to have to kick your ass. I think you could use a cup of tea first." "I knew it was a mistake to let you go." The captain glared at him, referring to the loophole that released Ichigo from their custody months ago. "How many more times will you step on the honor of the Shinigami? If you're talking about the same honor that would condemn an innocent person, your own sister, then I'll fucking tap dance all over it." Ichigo dropped his cup, letting the porcelain shatter on the ground, signaling the end of their discussion. The orange boy suddenly disappeared and reappeared in front of the captain with his sword in mid-swing. Byakuya easily blocked his attack and countered with his own strike. "This won't be like your fight with Captain Zaraki," he remarked emotionlessly. Ichigo just grinned and jumped back to avoid getting cut. "That's good. That means you have more finesse and grace that he didn't have." I might be in serious trouble. If Ichigo was worried, he didn't show it. His amused smirk never left his face, much to Byakuya's growing irritation, even after the captain unleashed the power of his Shikai. "Wow, that is really cool," Ichigo commented, dodging more razor-sharp pink cherry blossom petals. "Amazing. Out of all the Zanpakutos I've seen so far, yours has to be the coolest. Do you think flattery will save your life?" Byakuya glared at him. "Of course not. You'll cut me down without even blinking, just like you were about to let your own family die without lifting a finger." Ichigo said, turning from playful to venomous in a single sentence. Lead us into the light, oh no Kishi. Just like his fight with Kenpachi, his sword glowed, and he threw high into the air. Dozens of swords exactly the same rained down around them, sticking out of the barren ground of Sakyoku Hill. Ichigo grabbed the closest golden angel-winged sword. Let me ask you one question. You've known Rukia for years, and yet I've only known her for 6 months. So tell me why I care more about her than you do. You can't possibly understand, was the only answer the captain could give. Then I guess we have to fight until I can beat a real answer out of you. The blade in Ichigo's hand ignited with flames, and he resumed the fight. Unfortunately, this fight proved to be harder than his fight with Kenpachi, mainly because Byakuya figured out each sword had a different power much sooner than the other did. It got even worse when the captain of Squad 6 finally got serious and unleashed the power of his Bankai, making the finite number of petals seem nearly infinite. He also started to block Ichigo with the petals from picking up his own Shikai swords. Alright, think Ichigo. Wet beats razor flower petals, he thought while moving as fast as he could, avoiding each wave of Senbonzakura Joshi. The next thing he knew, he was surrounded in a sphere of these tiny pink blades. Oh, this isn't good. Gokai, Byakuya uttered, and the surrounding petals began to close in around the boy inside at his command. Within the mass, Ichigo just grinned as the sword in his transformed into a huge drill, which he pointed down at the shrinking surface of dirt beneath him. An explosion soon followed. The stoic captain merely turned and walked away from the shower of petals, falling into a habit of many who just assumed their opponent was destroyed without seeing it with their own eyes. This move appeared to be a mistake, as the ground beneath Kuchiki's feet shook, and then exploded into chunks of rocks. A large drill appeared out of the hole, and then a mop of orange messy hair. Hi, I think I took wrong turn in Albuquerque, Ichigo said, jumping out of the hole, while the drill turned back into another sword, which he promptly stabbed into the ground. The boy then charged towards the captain using his momentary confusion. He grabbed 2 swords and stabbed at Kuchiki, simultaneously crossing the blades together. Byakuya of course dodged the attack, but did not expect the crossed blades to fuse together and form a giant orange pair of scissors. Shave and a haircut, Ichigo sang, snipping the huge shears quickly and violently. The dark-haired captain moved back with his high-speed movement to avoid getting decapitated. But he still received 2 parallel cuts on both cheeks for being just a little too slow. Is there no end to your ridiculous Zanpakuto? Kuchiki asked, not bothering to wipe the blood from his cheeks. Nope. Ichigo tossed the big scissors away before grabbing another sword, just in time to turn and face the tsunami of Senbonzakura Joshi heading towards him. Getsuga Tensho, he called, sending a destructive wave of power to blow each and every petal back. You're going to have to do better than that, Ichigo smirked, pointing his sword at the Shinigami captain. Tell me, is it humiliating using your Bankai and getting defeated by someone who just uses their Shikai? I see there is no limits to your arrogance. Byakuya stared him down. Pardon, I couldn't quite hear you over how awesome I am, Ichigo remarked, while cupping his ear comically. You have yet to experience the true form of Senbonzakura Joshi. As he said this, the petals of his Bankai surrounded both of them in a field before combining together, forming a dome of many identical swords. Well, don't I feel like a poser? Ichigo said, seeing the similarity to his own no Kishi. Luckily, half of his swords were left to him inside this isolated dome. Senkei. This is the true form of my Zanpakuto. I only show this power to those who I've sworn to kill. You're the second to see it, he explained. I'm so honored, Ichigo spoke with heavy sarcasm. From there on out, it was all Ichigo getting sliced, stabbed and cut up, while only managing to land a few hits on his opponent. He managed to drive one of his gold swords into Byakuya's shoulder, but the captain countered by firing a Kaido at the same time into Ichigo's chest, sending the boy flying and tumbling across the ground. You're finished. You can't possibly continue to fight in this condition, Byakuya said, ignoring the wound in his shoulder. Ichigo stood back up on shaky legs, spitting out a mouth full of blood. Yeah, maybe you're right. Ichigo's smile fell into a frown. Since I'm going to die here, can I ask you something? He took the captain's silence as a yes. This Senkei Dome thing, can anyone from the outside see us? No, no one, but I will be able to witness your death, Byakuya said, assuring him that they were completely cut off. That's good, Ichigo chuckled dryly while lifting his sword. I apologize for this. I truly am sorry I must resort to this. But I'm only going to use it for 3 seconds. What are you talking about? Byakuya didn't like the malevolent Ryatsu that was coming off of the boy. You'll see in a moment. Ichigo let his sword fall from his hand. He wouldn't be needing it now. Banko no Yami. If one were looking from the outside, they would see the dome of Senkei explode from the inside out by a black mass of energy, or perhaps something more tangible. The dark torrent of power slinked away a few moments later, slowly seeping back into a single blade held by Ichigo Kurosaki, who bore a solemn expression for once as he stared at the barely standing form of Byakuya Kuchiki. The captain suffered numerous lacerations all over his body. The fact that he hadn't fallen yet was a testament to his resilience. However, his Bankai had disappeared. He no longer had the strength to fight. "I want to apologize again. I really didn't want to do that," Ichigo said as the rest of the black substance was absorbed into his Zanpakuto. "You possess such power, yet you don't wish to use it?" Byakuya asked, looking down at his broken sword. "It's not my Bankai's power that I don't like. It's what that power does to me that I'm afraid of. That's why I only used it for 3 seconds," Ichigo explained without his normal playful demeanor. "I told you a secret. Now how about you tell me why you didn't lift a finger to save Rukia?" Byakuya stared at him for a moment before explaining himself. "As a Shinigami, I have a duty to uphold the law. There are no exceptions to this. If I ignore the law for a single family member, what would that make me?" Byakuya asked. "It would make you a good man. Instead you choose to be bad man and a good death god," Ichigo said sternly. "Do you know where you'd be if you always ignored what you believe is right? You'll be all alone." "Byakuya, listen, you can't talk to duty. You can't hug and hold your pride. And you certainly can't spend time and holidays with them either. Loved ones are all we have. You protect them, and they protect you." Ichigo sheathed his sword, tossed a sour apple-flavored lollipop at Kuchiki's feet, and turned away from the captain. "I'll give you a chance to one day make this up to Rukia, as long as you never breathe a word of my Bankai." And with that, Ichigo disappeared in a blur of Shunpo, off to rendezvous with his friends. Ichigo Kurosaki. He truly is terrifying to possess both great power and wisdom at such a young age, Byakuya commented as he disappeared to who knows where, leaving nothing but the ruined grounds of Sokyoku Hill and a single piece of candy to mark where he once stood. Pretty roses with poisonous thorns. Such great power in such a small object, Aizen commented, holding the Hajioku he just removed from within Rukia Kuchiki. Renji laid heavily bleeding across the Sajoku Hill, struggling to stay conscious. He had been intercepted by Captain Towson while he was attempting to flee with Rukia, and both of them were brought back here. Aizen said he needed to burrow her, and when Renji refused attempting to fight back, he was cut down where he stood, and the captain was free to extract some sort of glowing object from inside Rukia's chest. "To think Kisuke Urahara believed he could hide it from me. I think it's time we left, Captain Aizen," Jin said with his eerie smirk. "Of course. Now let us wash our hands of the gaudy 13. Aizen stopped when the sound of someone clearing their throat caught his attention. "I don't think you three are getting away that easily," Ichigo said from behind them, with a cherry-flavored lollipop in his mouth. "Not if I have anything to say about it." Ichigo Kurosaki. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced," Aizen said with his smile still in place. "You mean the fake you I met 6 months ago at the captain's meeting, or the real you I'm meeting now?" Ichigo said, biting down on the candy with a loud crunch before spitting it out. "You weren't fooled by my rows then?" Aizen looked at him curiously. "Oh please, I knew you were evil from the moment I laid eyes on you," Ichigo scoffed. He was never fooled by the whole nice guy act. "And yet you never mentioned this to anyone?" Aizen asked skeptically. "If you recall, my opinion of the Shinigami is very low, so I figured they must have known you were a monster. Maybe that's what it takes to be a captain. But the whole facade was easy to see through. Like a pretty rose distracting you from the poison thorns. Your nice guy act was only superficial," Ichigo said, clutching the hilt of his gold angel-winged sword. "Is that so? I guess even the best actors can't fool everybody. But then again, a liar can always spot another liar from afar," Aizen said accusingly. Ichigo was not fazed and just chuckled dryly. "Plus, I noticed your glasses were not prescription." "I mean, what type of psycho asshole wears non-prescription glasses?" Ichigo tossed back with his own jab. "How do you plan on stopping us? You're outnumbered 3-1 and still injured from your fight with Byakuya." He was actually a little curious to see what Ichigo would do. The boy had already exceeded many of his expectations. "Well, I can stall for time and I can do this." Ichigo held his sword upside down, flicking open the bottom of the hilt open, revealing a red button. Just then a bunch of blades slid out of the ground all around them. Each one flashed red simultaneously. "All those swords are rigged to blow. Are standing comfortably now." "When did he set this up?" Towson asked aloud. "I believe he left them here after his fight with Captain Kuchiki," Aizen said. "I had a gut feeling that I would have to come back here, so I left the blades of my shikai here hidden under the surface of the ground." Ichigo grinned, holding his thumb over the detonation button. "Now no sudden movements or boom." "How terrifying," Jin said, sounding more amused than scared. Rukia, stand up, Ichigo ordered. Rukia stood up on shaky legs. Good, now move towards me. She did as he told her and slowly walked towards Ichigo. When she was halfway to him, she gasped, seeing a sword impale her orange-haired friend. What the hell? Ichigo looked down at the blade running through his stomach and followed it all the way to Captain Ikamaru from across the area. Okay, no one told me he could do that. Ichigo collapsed when the sword retracted all the way back to Jin. Good work, Jin. Now dispose of Miss Kuchiki, Aizen ordered. Rukia watched horrified as the extended blade came rushing towards her. The sword never pierced her. Instead, Byakuya appeared and shielded her body with his own. Before Aizen could make a remark, he found himself surrounded by the other captains and lieutenants at sword point. It appears Kurosaki was successful in stalling us, Aizen said, not even flinching at the sight of such dangerous opponents around him. No matter, beams of light came down and shielded Aizen and his accomplices. A garganta filled with Gillians appeared directly above the traitors and pulled them protectively inside. Before he left, Aizen took off his glasses and slicked his hair back and took one last look at the orange-haired boy who lay on the ground. Farewell, Ichigo Kurosaki. I look forward to seeing how much you evolve. And with that, the portal to Huko Muendo closed shut. Creep, Ichigo mumbled, rolling over on his back, grimacing in pain. Relax, a voice said soothingly. He looked over to see Captain Anohana kneeling next to him. Oriheim, bring me Oriheim, he asked between breaths. At some point he passed out, but eventually he felt the warm glow of his girl's powers covering him and healing his body. Ichigo drifted off into a deeper sleep with a smile on his face. 2 days later. Chocolate River, Ichigo yelled, sitting up, startling his aunt. Damn it, someday. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes. You should lay back down, Aizen said with a bright red blush on her face. The reason for that was that Ichigo was currently shirtless, sitting there with messy tossed hair that made him look even more attractive. I feel fine. He was about to get out of the bed when the captain of Squad 4 herself slid the door open rather loudly and walked in. That may be true, but I must perform one last checkup to make sure you've fully healed, and it would be easier for both of us if you laid back down, Anohana said with a cheerful smile that would have unnerved most. However, Ichigo was one of the few it seemed to have no effect on. Luckily, he was at the very least reasonable and laid back down. All right, hurry up. I got people to find, Ichigo grumbled, waiting for her to finish. Anohana placed a hand on his chest and used a medical kaido that allowed her to scan his body for any injuries or sickness. Oriheim healed me, right? That she did, and when she was finished, she helped heal many others who were injured in the conflict. That girl doesn't like to see people suffer. You're a very lucky man to have her, Anohana said, praising his girl. I need to put a baby in her, Ichigo said bluntly with a chuckle, while the captain finished her checkup. You're fine, but I recommend you take it easy for a while. Ichigo gave her a thumbs up and jumped out of the bed, removing the sheet that covered the lower half of his body. Aizen gasped, blushed, and covered her eyes, in that order. What? Ichigo looked at while standing in the middle of the room in only a pair of black boxer briefs. You're a medic. You see this all the time. He looked around for something to wear. Hey doc, where are my clothes? They should be on table, Anohana said, pointing at the nightstand. Ichigo didn't see his clothes, but he did see a note. Dear Kurosaki, you shouldn't wear such ragged clothes. They will be repaired, cleaned, and returned to you soon. Nearly free of charge. Uryu Ishida. Thanks, Ishida, he said sarcastically while crumpling the note up. Hey doc, you got anything I can wear for now? There are some spare clothes that sometimes get left behind and stored for other patients. I'll go see what I can find. Anohana left, followed by her lieutenant, who Ichigo couldn't help but wink at on her way out. Aizen returned, shoving a folded wad of clothing in his arms and running out before he could say anything flirtatious. Ichigo put the clothes on. From the waist down, it was normal Shinigami attire. The typical black hakama pants. However, the top was a black long coat with red lining the inside that fit a little snug around the chest and arms. Not that he minded, and was frayed and torn along the ends. It actually reminded him of his black cloak he used to wear only without the hood. He grabbed his Zanpakuto and left the 4th Division in search of Oriheim and possibly some food. Captain's meeting. Ichigo Kurosaki has awakened and went in search of his friends, Anohana reported, falling in line with her fellow captains. Why is he allowed to walk around freely after what he did? Questioned Soifon. If it wasn't for him, Aizen wouldn't have had to expose himself like he did. Rukia Kuchiki would have been unjustly killed, and we'd be none the wiser. Yukitake said a little harshly towards the captain of the 2nd Division. It was thanks to the boys' interference that Aizen had to change his plans and openly betray them. and for that he had earned most of their respects. I think the real issue here is his strength finally being revealed. Kurosaki defeated 2 captains. Should we really allow someone with that kind of power roam free? Hitsugeya asked. He was still recovering from what Aizen did to him, but was well enough to attend the meeting unlike Captain Kuchiki. He may not like us, but he doesn't want to kill us. I say that's good enough for me, Kairaku chimed in. But is he our ally? Kamamura questioned aloud, making everyone stop and think. Maybe not, at least not yet. Perhaps we could make him our ally, Yukitake said. Not by force though. With the right chemicals, his compliance doesn't need to be a factor, Kuretsuchi said creepily. Let's not drug or experiment on the kid. I think that would do more harm than good, Kairaku brought up quickly, shooting down Mayuri's suggestion. Head captain, I may have a solution to this, or at least a way to get in his good graces, and maybe a step towards getting his alliance, Yukitake said, proposing an honest solution to this problem. Explain, Yamamoto said. Later. You want me to do what? Ichigo asked. He had successfully found Orihime and Tatsuki eating in a nice restaurant, so he decided to join them. However, before he could even start, he was suddenly approached by the lieutenant of Squad 8 Nanao, who practically ordered him to come with her to the captain's meeting. Ichigo of course refused, much to the woman's frustration, and she went to go tattle to her captain. Next thing he knew, all the captains, excluding the 3 traitors, and the hospitalized Kuchiki, marched right into the establishment. At first he thought he was being arrested again, but they quickly had a long table set up, and decided to join him for lunch, while they discussed things. We would like you to move into the Seireitei, Yukitake repeated. Well, I can't see that happening since I protect the Rukin district, therefore I need to live there, Ichigo explained, putting emphasis on each word. Exactly. The Seireitei is in the center of Soul Society. If you lived here, it would be easier for you to sense and hunt down the hollows that enter our world, Hitsugeya brought up. That does sound appealing, but I don't want to deal with all that paperwork bullshit. That will just slow me down like it slowed your whole organization down, Ichigo said, not bothering to hold back the jab at their incompetence again. You wouldn't have to deal with that. You'd be free to act on your own, Kairoku added. What do you think, Haim? Ichigo asked, looking over at his girlfriend. It does sound convenient, but what about my job? Could I still do that here? She asked. What job is that? If I may ask, Anohana said, curious about what she did. Orihime explained that started a counseling service with a group of others like her to help people deal with their own death, and also help them find their loved ones. That's brilliant. Why haven't we thought of that? Yukitake said aloud. I don't know. A better question would be, when did you stop caring for the people you send to the Soul Society? Ichigo said accusingly. A few of the captains actually looked a little ashamed, knowing he was right. All right, you asked me to move in with you all here, so what's the catch? That was a question they all knew was coming. To put in the simplest terms, we would like your assistance, Yukitake said solemnly. We have an idea of what Aizen is planning, and we would like to count on your help in the upcoming war against him. He's one of yours, why don't you deal with him? Ichigo said dismissively. I don't see why I should care about your mess. You should care, Soifon yelled. I don't though, I don't have beef with the guy, Ichigo shrugged. It was him who framed Rukia and had her sentenced to be executed, Kamamura brought up. Ichigo noticed the man looked to be some hybrid with a man and a wolf, but held his tongue, remembering how the captain hid his face before this. He must be sensitive about it, and Ichigo didn't like picking on people's appearance towards those who were too sensitive. Water under the bridge. Rukia was cleared of all charges when Aizen revealed himself as the perpetrator. Plus, she's still alive, the orange teenager argued. Aizen's associate Jin Ikumaru stabbed you. Do you not care? Anohana asked. No, who else stabbed me a bunch of times, Kenpachi and Byakuya. So should I hunt down them? Ichigo fired back. He murdered the entire Central 46, Soifon said furiously. You mean the government that tries to keep the Soul Society exactly the way it is instead of advancing? Hey Kuretsuchi, what was it like trying to get your new science and technologies sanctioned by Central? He asked the face-painted captain who sat down at the other end of the table. Was it like pulling teeth? He chuckled while Mayuri grumbled something about backwards fools. I'm not happy that they're dead, nor am I sad. But you have to see the point Aizen was making when he killed the governing body and impersonated them for who knows how long. And what point is that? The head captain asked, sitting there at the head of the table, eyes closed in thought. That you guys would blindly do anything your government tells you without question. Had anyone taken a good long look at the forged reports and falsified documents, they might have actually seen through the lies, but you didn't. So let's try this again. Why should I help you? Ichigo asked, resting his chin on his knuckles. If Aizen is allowed to carry out his plan, it will mean the death and destruction of countless souls in both the world of the living and soul society. Hitsugaya added in. It irritated how little Kurosaki seemed to care. So he decided to play on his compassion and obvious desire to protect the weak. You guys drive a hard bargain, Ichigo said, finishing his lunch and popping a piece of minty gum in his mouth. And what about you, Grandpa? What do you think of all this? He asked, addressing the head captain. Whether we like it or not, your power simply can't be ignored at this point. But I'm not going to jump through hoops over you, the old Shinigami said sternly, leaving no room for argument. Fair enough. All right, I'll live here. But I have conditions. Ichigo began by listing all that would be required for him to live here. First and foremost, Orihime would be allowed to live here with him. Secondly, she would be given full support for building more of her counseling centers in the Rukin district. And lastly, Ichigo wanted a job. Something for him to do in between hunting hollows and investigating crimes in the Rukin. That seems reasonable. We can work with those terms, Kairaku said. Most seemed to nod in agreement, while Kenpachi just grinned happy that his new favorite opponent would be closer to him. So where am I gonna crash? Everyone looked at each other in confusion. Apparently, they didn't think that far ahead. The next day. Thanks for the help, Chad, Ichigo said. The big guy helped Ichigo and Orihime pack up their stuff and move into their new home in the Seireitei. It's no problem, Sato said quietly. For a big guy, you sure don't talk much, Ichigo joked, sliding the door open. The Shinigami had provided him with a nice house that was close to the Shino Academy, since it used to belong to one of the teachers. It had much more space than the shack they lived in before. He knew they would be better off here. As much as he didn't care for the Gotti 13 as a whole, putting up with their incompetence was worth it as long as he got to take care of Orihime. Kurosaki, Oryu appeared holding a bag. Here's your clothes back. Wow, it's like new. Who sewed it back together? Ichigo asked, examining his now repaired white long-sleeve shirt and jeans. I sewed it back together, the Quincy said, pushing his glasses up. Oh, thanks. You know you're certainly going to make some lucky guy very happy one day. He snickered while Ishida just glared at him. Seriously, thanks Quincy dude. Later that day, the humans had to return to the world of the living where they belong. Rukia, Ichigo and Orihime went to see them off. Bye Tatsuki. Orihime hugged her friend. I'll come visit if they let me, she said back. She then turned to Ichigo, giving him a serious look. You better take care of her. You don't know how lucky you are, she threatened. Luck has nothing to do with it if you're really good in bed. Rukia elbowed him in the ribs hard for that. Oh, abusive much, Ichigo then, and looked at her with his rare maturity. Hey Tatsuki, can you do me a favor? Tell my family that I'm doing fine here. Tell them not to worry about me. And tell my dad I got a girlfriend, and I'm trying very hard to get him a grandchild. He snickered. Luckily, he managed to dodge the kick to the shin that he knew was coming. Orihime blushed and laughed her embarrassment off. The group of former invaders said their goodbyes and parted ways at the gateway to the world of the living. When they were gone, Ichigo hugged Orihime from behind. How about we go break in our new house? He whispered seductively. He looked over at Rukia, grinning wickedly. You're welcome to come join us, shrimp. Or just watch, I can get into that too. Orihime ducked as her boyfriend was kicked in the face by an angry Shinigami girl. 1 week later, Ichigo hammered away at a red-hot metal blade vigorously. He was currently in his inner world in the White Star cross-shaped city in the sky. The battles against 2 captain-level opponents made him realize where his limits were and see his own weaknesses. You've spent a lot of time here, Ichigo. You made 10 new swords this week. His Zanpakuto spirit said as Ichigo continued to hammer away in the workshop/throne room of the palace. Yeah, it's just, I let myself get too cocky, too arrogant. I barely won my fight against Kenpachi, and with Byakuya I had no choice but to use my Bankai and call on his help, Ichigo said, dipping the heated blade into a vat of water to cool it. He took of the old man's sunglasses and handed them back to their owner before taking off the work gloves and sitting up on the slab. I need to get stronger. I need more swords. You were the one who said our Shikai was unbeatable. No, I said eventually it could become unbeatable, the old man said, walking over to the newly finished sword, his black cape flowing behind him. There's no need to rush, Ichigo. Just like all great works, it will take time. He picked up the blade and held his other hand up to it, adding his component to it before Ichigo added the power to it. You might be right, but it doesn't hurt to be prepared. Ichigo smiled as his new sword levitated over to his outstretched hand. He looked at his reflection in the blade. He had special idea for this one. Maybe his Shikai did have room to improve in some areas. He's getting restless, you know. You should talk to him again. The old man said, referring to the other dominant being in this realm, the one that inhabited the barren wasteland below the city. I have nothing to say to him, Ichigo said sternly. You must eventually, otherwise we'll never reach a balance of power, unless we learn to compromise, the Zanpakuto warned. It's just I haven't spoken to him face to face since I achieved Bankai, Ichigo said, putting his tools away and removing his gloves. He walked over to the center of the throne room carrying the new blade. Holding it out, he watched as a knight in silver armor, like all the others in the palace, materialized out of light, kneeling before him. Ichigo used the sword to tap both shoulders of his new knight and dubbed him. Push and pull, he declared, handing the knight the sword. That is your power. Your Majesty, the knight said gratefully, taking the new blade. All right, that makes 11 new swords, Ichigo said proudly. You should go. I sense someone outside is attempting to gain your attention, the old man warned. See you next time. Ichigo closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, he was sitting on the wooden porch of his new home in the Seireitei with Yukitake and Kairaku standing before him. Oh hey, how long have you two been there? He asked, stretching his stiff joints. He had been in a meditative state for a little over an hour. Recently, hollow activity had slowed down considerably. Most believed Aizen had something to do with that, almost like he was purposely giving them all time to spare so they could train. Ichigo scoffed at the arrogance behind that. It was like Aizen was telling them it didn't matter how ready they were when things came to head. About 5 minutes. We thought you were sleeping until Kairaku pointed out you were meditating. Kairaku nodded and sat down on the porch, next to him, pouring himself and Ichigo a cup of sake. So I take it you guys have finally found me a job to do around here? Ichigo asked, taking a drink. Both captains smiled and looked at each other knowingly. Yes, found a position you might enjoy, Kairaku said mischievously. I think I'm going to like this, Ichigo grinned. The next day at the Shino Academy. A large classroom filled with students sat idle and chatted with their friends and fellow Shinigami in training. This new course that was invented this week was optional for every student no matter the year. While it was optional, many students were taking it for the new and interesting subject. Also, the marks in the class would look good on their record for when they graduate. A lot of the gossip was about the teacher that had yet to arrive. Apparently, he was famous for not only protecting the Rukan district from hollows single-handedly. There were also rumors going around that he broke into the Seireitei and defeated not only Captain Kuchiki, but the much-feared Kenpachi Zaraki. Sorry I'm late, folks, said a voice from the entrance. The door slid open, revealing a tall 17-year-old with a slim-toned body, a handsome face that was making all the girls instantly fantasize about him, and spiking orange hair that just went past his shoulders. He didn't wear the normal Shinigami attire, nor the attire of a teacher. Instead, he wore a deep V-white long-sleeve t-shirt, blue jeans, and red Converse shoes with his old and rusted-looking Zanpakuto strapped to his belt loops. Wow, I didn't expect this big a turnout, Ichigo commented, walking to the front of the classroom, clearing his throat. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Current World of Living Studies. I'll be your teacher. The name is Ichigo Kurosaki, but you lot will refer to me as Professor Ichigo. He grinned, creepy the students out. He was looking forward to all the fun he could have teaching these ignorant future Shinigami the current trends and affairs of the world of the living. The head captain realized how little they all knew of the humans' world, and prior knowledge of said world would certainly help with missions and patrols. Professor Ichigo. All right, class. Can anybody identify what I'm wearing? Ichigo asked his students. Everyone looked at him confused and remained silent. Really, no one? A shirt, someone said. Correct. But in the modern human world, it's often referred to as a top. Now what about the pants? Can anybody tell what they are? Nobody seemed to know, so he went on to explain what jeans were and the different variety. Then Ichigo explained to them the shoes, which to his humor he noticed that the men boys seemed disinterested, while the women were captivated. Next, Ichigo explained what fashion trends were in, and what were needed to blend in. Excuse me, Kurosaki, a male student asked, raising his hand. Ichigo ignored him as he continued his lesson. Sorry, Professor Ichigo, he corrected himself. Yes? Ichigo drawled out cheekily. Why do we need to learn about fashion trends in the human world? The boy asked. To better prepare you for missions to the human world and help you blend in, Ichigo explained. You don't want to end up like Lieutenant Renji Ibarai. I heard he went on a mission a few years back that required him to use a gigi. However, his clothing choice was a few decades off. Ichigo chuckled from the story Renji told him months ago when he was drunk. The idiot dressed like some disco king in modern-day America. Remember, that's Renji Ibarai, lieutenant of Squad 6. He told them all to write that down and mentally patted himself on the back for the gossip he helped start. At the end of the lesson, Ichigo gave them all an after-class assignment to be turned in the next time they met. They must come up with a sketch and list of what they would wear if they wanted to fit into the modern world of the living during a mission. Over the next few weeks, the class would meet every 3 days to discuss more trends and pop culture of the human world. Ichigo may have been an odd, eccentric instructor, but he did teach them well. One day he walked into his class to see an interesting surprise. Several high-ranking members of the GOTY 13 were sitting in the front row. All the students were shocked that Captain Hitsugaya, his Lieutenant Matsumoto, Lieutenant Abarai, Ikkaku and Yumichika of the 11th Division, and Rukia Kuchiki all attending the class. Well, this is an interesting development, Ichigo grinned. We are simply here under orders. The head captain will be stationing us in the world of the living soon, and told us to attend this class to better prepare ourselves, Toshiro explained dryly. It sounded like he'd rather be anywhere but here. He didn't tell Ichigo that the head captain was hoping to send him along with them to be stationed in Karakura town, the place they knew Aizen would be targeting. All of you, he pointed to the rest with his pen. Rukia, you're here? Yes, she said, drawing on the Kuchiki mask of indifference, acting like she didn't need to be there. That's good, because I heard from Tatsuki that you couldn't even figure out a juice box. He snickered, taking the wind out of her sails. Renji openly chuckled at that, earning a glare from Miss Kuchiki. What are you laughing at, Disco King? That shut Renji up, and the students started laughing at him. Can we just get this over with, Kurosaki? Ikkaku grumbled. He was suddenly startled when Ichigo smacked his desk with a yardstick that appeared out of nowhere. That's Professor Ichigo to you, student, and while you're in my class, you will refer to me as such, Ichigo scolded him. That's 10 points from Gryffindor. The students giggled amongst themselves. Due to Ichigo's lessons, they got that reference. The orange-haired instructor spent the next few hours destroying the group of Shinigami psychologically. He constantly picked on them, used them as examples. When asked why by Rangaku, he told them some humility would build character. Plus, he couldn't resist taking the high and mighty Shinigami down a peg. Oh, if only I could get that noble prick Byakuya in here, Ichigo thought as he watched the class fill out. His new Shinigami students glared hatefully at him as they walked out. Ichigo stayed after grading a few assignments that were turned in late. The Shino Academy graded things on a simple 3-point system that he appreciated. 1 was mediocre, 2 was average, and 3 was exceptional. After he was done and out the door of the academy, a black butterfly landed on his shoulder. Apparently, he was being ordered to attend a captain's meeting. I must be early, Ichigo commented as he flashed into the meeting hall, seeing the only other person here was Soi Fan. Hi, he tried to get her attention. She just ignored him as he walked in, and took up the empty spot that Captain Aizen left. I get the feeling you don't like me very much. What gave it away? Soi Fan growled out. Ichigo chuckled at her witty comment. That's the spirit, I knew you had a sense of humor in there, he smirked. Yoruichi said you didn't like nonsense. Lady Yoruichi talked about me? Soi Fan blushed with a nervous swallow. What did she say? Well, she spoke very highly of you a lot. He decided not to mention that Yoruichi talked about Urahara a lot too. He was told that would be a dangerous subject to bring up around Soi Fan. She said you were her favorite. Not sure what she meant by that now that I think about. Is that so? Soi Fan stopped glaring hatefully at him for once. She told me that she trained you too. Is that right? Yup. Ichigo wasn't sure where she was going with this. Then maybe we should see who the better student of Lady Yoruichi is. Soi Fan smirked competitively at him. You're on. Just name the when and where. He smirked back at her, accepting the challenge. The rest of the captains filed in right after their conversation. Ichigo just quietly hummed while popping a bubble gum lollipop in his mouth. The head captain walked in and the meeting began. They basically just talked about preparations for Aizen and what he might be planning to do with the Hojoku. Ichigo perked up his ears when he heard that Karakura town was his target. That place was important to him. Not only was it where he lived when he was alive, but his family and friends still resided there. We will be stationing Captain of the 10th Division Hitsugaya, Lieutenant Rangaku Matsumoto, Lieutenant Renji Abarai, 3rd and 4th seats of Squad 11 Madara Ikkaku and Ayakawa Yumichika, and Rukia Kuchiki in the world of the living as a first response team to protect the city from any possible threats Aizen may send there. Yamamoto explained the mission. I propose we send Ichigo Kurosaki with the team as well, Yukitake announced. What was that now? Ichigo asked, snapping to attention. I agree. I heard he lived there, so he would know the place best, Kairaku added. I knew the place as a child. It could be different from I remember, Ichigo argued back. I'm not going. I agree, Kurosaki should go to Karakura, Byakuya said. Honestly, he just wanted to get Ichigo away from the Seireitei for a while. The boy was a nuisance, and a complete rebel to their traditional ways. I'm not going, and that's final. Ichigo bit down hard on his lollipop, letting it crunch in his mouth. He attempted to leave, but was stopped by the heavy, terrifying weight of the head captain's Ryatsu. It stunned him for a moment, but he quickly shook it off with his own Ryatsu and walked out of the meeting hall rather rudely. Ichigo furiously stormed his way back to his home. How dare they? How dare they? He fumed, sliding the door open violently. He stood in his home, wanting to just scream in rage at the audacity they showed. Yeah, that's good, my king. Give me some more of that delicious anger, the sinister voice said from the back of his mind. The voice actually made Ichigo calm down a bit and think for a moment. Ichigo, are you okay? Orihime asked. She had just got off work at the new counseling center when she felt Ichigo's anger through his spiritual pressure. Rushing to their house, she found him standing in the entry shaking with rage. I'm fine. Ichigo calmed himself again, this time forcefully. He didn't want Orihime to see him like this. He took a deep breath and sat down. The captains actually had the balls to suggest sending me to Karakura as some sort of bullshit first response team. Oh, Orihime sat down with him, looking away sadly. She knew why he wanted to avoid that place. It was connected with his past. Something he tried desperately to avoid dealing with. They have no right. Just cause they're gods of death doesn't give them the right to torment me. The truth was that there was still so much about his own death he didn't fully understand. Just thinking about it brought painful memories of what happened and everything he left behind. The fact that the captains wanted to send him to the very place he left behind, the place where his remaining family still resided, was nothing short of cruel. While he stewed in anger, Orihime glanced at the ring on her middle finger. A gold ring with a diamond shaped like a six-pointed snowflake pressed into it. She thought about the conversation she recently had with the Shinigami Women's Association, which she was practically strong-armed into joining, the other day. Flashback. He made you that. That's so romantic, Rengoku said, examining the ring on Orihime's finger. I used to have these hair clips shaped like this. But when I died, they didn't come with my soul, Orihime said sadly. Those hair clips were given to her by her brother Sora, and she was extremely saddened when they didn't come with her to the Soul Society. Ichigo had secretly procured some materials and fashioned her a ring. He said his Zanpakuto spirit taught him a lot about craftsmanship. This ring helps me focus my power. So tell us about Ichigo. Anohana wanted to know more about the mysterious orange-haired teenager. I don't know much about how died, I'm afraid. It happened when I was very young. But from what he told me, he said he was killed by a hollow, she explained. The women listened and were sorry to hear that. He told me he doesn't remember how he ended up in the Soul Society. Ichigo said he ended up outside the districts. Anohana visibly paled at that. She knew the Rukan districts got worse the further you got out. But outside past all those districts was another matter entirely. What does that mean? What's outside the districts? Nanao asked. Not many know. The land outside the districts are completely lawless and unmanageable. The few poor souls that end up there never come out. The fact that Ichigo as a boy made out of the Badlands is nothing short of a miracle, Anohana explained. There were still many more questions she had. How did Ichigo survive? Why did he end up there? Was that where he got his Zanpakuto? You really do care about him, don't you? Rengoku asked. Of course, he protected me. He helped me, and he always supports me no matter what, Orihime said. Well, that's a bummer. I was hoping he wasn't in a serious relationship. The lieutenant of Squad 10 sighed dramatically. The good men were always taken. You sure you're that committed to him? I would never leave him no matter what, the auburn-haired girl exclaimed. The women giggled and murmured something about young love. End flashback. You're right, they don't have the right. But they are asking you for help, Orihime said, hugging him from behind. Wasn't it you that said help should always be given to those who can swallow their pride and ask for it? Ichigo let out a dry chuckle at that. You're right, I did say that. Ichigo laughed for a bit. I'm still not going, though. If that's what you wish, then I'll support you, she said, giving him a peck on the cheek. Thanks, he kissed her back. A week passed since he stormed out of the captain's meeting, and Ichigo made a point to avoid them as much as possible, except for the Shinigami that attended his class in preparation for their mission. Hitsugaya didn't mention anything about it during or after the class, which Ichigo appreciated. However, the last day of the week, he received another interesting surprise. There, sitting in the seat at the end of the first row next to the other high-ranking Shinigami, was the captain of Squad 6 himself, Byakuya Kuchiki. Well, Ichigo said with an almost evil grin, taking steps toward Byakuya's seat. Dreams do come true, he said, placing his hands on the desk in front of him. Kurosaki, Byakuya began. but was cut off when Ichigo smacked the table in front of him with his yardstick. Professor Ichigo. That's what you'll be calling me in my class. He smirked, seeing the Kuchiki clan head, giving him a blank death glare. Isn't that right, class? Right, Professor Ichigo. The students shouted simultaneously. Say it, Ichigo hissed, pointing his yardstick at the Kuchiki. I refuse, Byakuya said stoically. Well then I guess I'll have to take points from. You look like a Slytherin, so I'm taking 20 points from Slytherin, Ichigo said threateningly, even though the joke was lost on the captain. I'm only here because Rukia asked me to. He glanced over at his sister, who sat next to him. That's fascinating, Mr. Headpiece, Ichigo mocked. Captain Kuchiki just continued to glare at him emotionlessly for making fun of his traditional family head wear. The rest of the class period was spent tormenting the captain of Squad 6. Ichigo, of course, wanted him to suffer for letting his sister almost get executed. It got to the point where Ichigo moved Byakuya's desk and forced him to sit in front of the whole classroom. Public humiliation for the win. After class, the captain stayed behind to have a word with him. Was that all really necessary? Byakuya asked, referring to the way he was treated. Being a noble, he had never been treated so poorly before. Think of it as payback for what you did. So as long as you treat Rukia properly, I'd say we are even now. Ichigo leaned back on his desk and crossed his arms. So why are you really here? The other captains wanted to persuade you into joining Captain Hitsuge's team, he explained. I'm surprised they sent you of all the captains to convince me. Ichigo was expecting someone like Yukitake or Kairaku to come try and sweet-talk him into going. Yukitake would have been too nice about it. I'm here to tell you the truth, Byakuya said seriously. Aizen is planning to wipe out that entire town, which means the death and destruction of thousands of people. Can you live with yourself, knowing your family died in all the chaos? Who told you I had family? Anohana said you lived and died in Karakura, and that you still have family there. The captain actually scoffed at him. After all that talk about me abandoning my family, you would abandon yours so easily as well. Let's not forget it's your fellow captains that are behind this, Ichigo said accusingly. I agreed to help fight against Aizen when the time came, but I have no interest in facing everything I was forced to leave behind. Ichigo's voice was raising with each sentence. How would you feel if you had to return to the place you lost everything? Your life, your family, everything you had gone in an instant. It wouldn't be fun, would it, to have to come face to face with all you lost? So it's your past you're afraid of? Byakuya asked a little condescendingly. I'm not afraid of anything, Ichigo argued back. Then go to Karakura. Byakuya turned to leave, but stopped when he heard Ichigo's next question. You once told me that I was wrong to assume you knew nothing of the conditions of the Rukin district. What did you mean by that? Ichigo asked, changing the subject. Byakuya remained silent for a few minutes before finally answering him. My late wife Hisana. She was from one of the poorest districts in the Rukin. The older Shinigami explained. She left me with the request that I find and adopt her sister, who you've already met. You mean Rukia? Ichigo figured out that's who he was talking about. I see. He understood what all this meant. You know, people would like you more if you didn't pretend that you don't have a heart, was the last thing Ichigo said to the noble before Kuchiki walked out of the classroom. Tell the old man I'll think about it, he shouted down the hall. The next day Ichigo didn't have a class to teach and Oriheim was busy working, so he decided to train on his front lawn. Setting up a few targets with smiley faces painted on, he was just about to start when two captains intruded on his downtime. Ichigo, care for a drink? Kairaku asked, holding a bottle of sake. Yukitake stood next to him. Not surprising, really. Those two always came to talk to him together. Sorry, need my wits about me right now, Ichigo said, not turning away from the targets. Pointing his hand at the first smiley face, 4 red beams shot out of his fingers, blowing the target to smoldering pieces. What sort of Kaido is that? Yukitake asked. It's something I made up. It doesn't have a name yet. Rukia tried to teach me Kaido, but I just can't wrap my head around. All the incantations, names and numbers is total bullshit if you ask me. Ichigo grabbed his hair in frustration. So I figured it would be easier to just shoot Raizhi from my fingers. The two captains gave him a funny look. What? Can't all of you do that? No, we can't. The Shinigami had no such technique like that without the focus of the demon arts. In fact, Ichigo's technique almost looked like it belonged to a zap. Ichigo shot out more beams that blasted apart the other targets. I know why you're both here. Is that so? Kairaku said. Byakuya, I'm sure told you that I'm thinking about going. Ichigo blasted another target with his red finger beams. Well, I've decided to go, but I have conditions. Perhaps we should discuss this with the head captain. If you'll come with us, Yukatake and Kairaku disappeared with flash step followed by Ichigo. They quickly arrived in the old man's office. Yamamoto looked unsurprised, like he was expecting them to come here. "All right, old man, I'll join Hitsuge's team. But I need a few things first," Ichigo grinned. "And what do you need?" The old Shinigami grumbled, not liking that he would have to bend to the needs of this brat. "First of all, Orihime comes with me. I don't trust you all enough to leave her here alone, plus you'll find that I'll be more motivated when I have a beautiful girl to keep me company." Shunsui couldn't help but chuckle at that. He could definitely respect Ichigo's appreciation of lovely women. "Is that all?" Yamamoto asked. "Oh no, we're just getting started," Ichigo laughed, seeing the sour look the old man's face. He stuck a cherry-flavored lollipop in his mouth and began to list off his conditions. In the end, what the orange teenager asked for was somewhat agreeable. He would help defend Karakura along with Hitsuge's team, but he was free to act on his own if he saw fit to do so. Even though hollow attacks in the Rukin have almost stopped, he wanted regular patrols and a quick response team to protect it while he was gone. There were also several people who he needed assurances would be given protection, mainly Tatsuki, Chad, Uryu, and his former family in the world of the living. Yukatake assured him that those people would be given special care for when the war took place. And just like that, Ichigo was all set to go to Karakura. Just in time, too. The team was supposed to leave tomorrow morning. The next morning. "I am not a morning person," Ichigo yawned, while standing before the main gateway to the human world. He carried a small suitcase with him packed with a few essentials. He also wore the black long coat that Unohana gave him over his white long-sleeve shirt and jeans. He kept it because he felt it made him look badass. "Welcome to my world," Renji grumbled, while yawning himself. "Suck it up, you two," Rukia scolded them both. "Is everyone ready?" Captain Hitsuge asked. His team nodded their heads as the large gateway opened that led through the precipice realm and to their destination. The trip only took a few minutes. The group ended up in, ironically, a graveyard. "Well, call me if you need me," Ichigo said, grabbing Orihime's hand and walking away with a wave to the rest. "Wait, where do you think you're going?" Dishiro asked, seeing them just leave. "We're going to find a place to crash. You all should probably do the same." Ichigo chuckled, seeing the realization that they had no place to stay dawn on all their faces. While walking down the street with Orihime, he glanced around at all the humans that remained oblivious to their presence. Ichigo pulled a piece of paper that Yoruichi gave him out of his pocket when he last saw her in the Soul Society. She said to go to this address if he ever found himself in Karakura town. "Where we going to stay, Ichigo?" Orihime asked. "Wherever this address is. Hold on, let me get my bearings," he said, licking his finger to test the wind. While the two of them were paying no mind to the humans who couldn't see them, they didn't seem to notice a young dark-haired girl who could. Karin Kurosaki stared disbelievingly at the tall orange-haired teenager that walked by her. He looked just like an older version of her deceased brother. That woman with him even called him Ichigo, the same name as her late older brother. Karin decided to follow those two and find out just what the hell is going. "So this must be the Urahara Shoten," Ichigo said aloud, staring at the quaint little shop that just oozed suspicion. Yoruichi said he was an exiled criminal in hiding. If so, this wasn't much of a hiding place. "Hello, anybody home?" Ichigo said, knocking on the front door. No answer. "Girl Scout cookies." That got some results. A boy with short red hair and big eyes opened the door. "Show me the cookies," the boy ordered. "Show me the money," Ichigo shot back. The child attempted to slam the sliding door closed, but Ichigo stuck his foot in the way and walked right in. "All right, let's not pussyfoot around. I'm looking for Kisuke Urahara. And it looks like you found him," a voice from behind him said, making his eyes widen. Ichigo spun around to an unkempt blonde guy wearing green robes, wooden sandals, and a green and white striped hat hiding the top half of his face. "Trying to sneak up on me there?" Ichigo grinned, stepping between him and Orihime. Just in case this guy wasn't as trustworthy as Yoruichi made him out to be. "I presume you're Kisuke then?" "Yes, I am Kisuke Urahara, manager and owner of the Urahara Shoten, the one-stop shop for all your Shinigami needs," he bragged, holding his hand out. Charmed, Ichigo shook his hand politely. "Me and my lovely girlfriend Orihime here were looking for a place to stay for our assignment here in the world of the living. I'm sure we can arrange something here. I can set you up with a few rooms," the shopkeeper said, pulling out a fan and using it to hide the rest of his face. "Actually, we'll just need one room," Orihime blurted out without thinking. "Oh, you two are an item. Yoruichi didn't mention that," Urahara said from behind his fan. "Well, I'll get you a room here. But I have a few conditions that have to be met first." "I'm not gonna like this, am I?" Ichigo sighed. "Yoruichi told me she was training you, and I would like to see how far you've progressed," he said, snapping his fan shut. "Really, that's it? Okay, yeah, bring it on," Ichigo laughed. "This way, please," Kisuke pointed with Kain leading them down a hall. "You and me are going to fight. If I think you've done well under Yoruichi's guidance, then I'll let you stay here, mostly free of charge." "Mostly?" Ichigo rolled his eyes at that, following the strange man down a trapdoor. "My power is to give power." "Are you a Time Lord?" Ichigo asked, looking around at the huge landscape that was located underneath the shop. "No, I am not," Urahara chuckled. "Are you sure you're not a Time Lord or some kind of wizard at least?" Ichigo asked again, looking at him skeptically. "Shall we proceed with this little test, Mr. Kurosaki?" Kisuke grinned, drawing a sword from his cane. "Mr. Kurosaki is my father. Call me Ichigo, please." The boy didn't seem to be taking this very seriously. "Well, Ichigo, you better draw your sword," or he disappeared and reappeared behind Ichigo. "You'll get hurt." A small cut appeared on the shoulder of his black coat. "What the hell, man, I like this jacket," Ichigo ranted, pulling his coat off and tossing it over for Orihime to hold. Faster than anyone could blink, he drew his old antique-looking sword and charged Kisuke, locking blades and pushing him far away from their spectators. The two of them slashed and parried blows. Ichigo pointed 2 fingers at him, shot 2 red beams that burned a hole in Kisuke's robe. Payback for his jacket. "You're doing quite well, Ichigo," Urahara commented, blocking another slash. "Funny, I was about to say the same thing to you." Ichigo jumped back to get some distance. "Perhaps we should use our Zanpakuto powers now?" Kisuke asked, trying to be coy about it. "I'll show you mine if you show me yours," Ichigo smirked. "We're talking about our Shikai, right?" Kisuke smirked back at him. "Oh, I like you." The orange teenager laughed, holding his sword up. "Lead us into the light." "Oh no, Kishi." Ichigo's blade glowed as he tossed it high into the air. A moment later, dozens of identical gold-hilted with gilded angel-winged swords rained down around them, lodging into the earth. Ichigo grabbed the one closest to him and held it at the ready. "What an interesting Zanpakuto oh no Kishi is. I take it this is not some illusion?" Urahara asked, thinking about Aizen and his sword's abilities. "You tell me." Ichigo's grin almost turned crazy as he pointed the sword at the blonde man. "Pull." At his command, Kisuke suddenly found himself being yanked forward by an invisible force. In moments, he'd be impaled by the boy's sword. "Awaken, Benihime." There was an explosion of red just before he reached Ichigo's blade. Kisuke used his Shikai to repel himself away from the sword, just before he was stuck with it. That pulling felt very real. So it's not an illusion then. "Correct. Each of these swords is as real as you and me." To emphasize his point, Ichigo grabbed another sword from the ground with his left hand. This blade ignited into flames, which Ichigo swung towards the shop owner, sending a wave of searing fire at him. Kisuke dodged. However, the area was now filled with smoke, obscuring his view of the teenager. That appeared to be his plan, because a few moments later Urahara was forced to dodge a large and loud chainsaw cutting through the smoke, aiming for his head. Ichigo leaped out holding the razor-toothed weapon, with a terrifying grin on his face. "Groovy." Ichigo attempted to cut away at him with his chainsaw. Kisuke was having difficulty blocking the chain blades, as they would apply a vibratory pressure every time he collided with it. "Rikoho!" Kisuke sent a powerful hado at the boy, who just frowned as he attempted to cut through he blast. Ichigo succeeded, but the saw was knocked far from his hand, turning it back into a sword as it launched back into the ground. Ichigo ran over to grab another sword, but was hit by a reed wave, knocking him away from his precious swords. "Don't think I'll let you grab another sword, Ichigo." The shop owner smirked. It seems he spotted a weak point in Ichigo's fighting strategy. If he couldn't pick up one of his swords, then they were no threat to Kisuke. "Then I'll use my hands." Ichigo ran towards him, fist drawn. He efficiently dodged Urahara's blade while delivering a few punches and kicks. Unfortunately, Kisuke simply used his other hand to block each blow. Thought that didn't frustrate Ichigo. It actually excited him that he found another worthy opponent. After a few more failed strikes, he finally found an opening in the blonde man's defense. "Akuma Yubai." Ichigo jabbed 2 fingers to Kisuke's midsection with his Ryatsu enhanced hand. However, Urahara created a red shield with his Zanpakuto that cracked upon getting hit by Ichigo's technique. "Sorry, but Yoruichi told me about that nasty technique of yours." Ichigo just smirked despite his attack being thwarted. "Just trying to get a good angel." Kisuke's confusion quickly turned to realization as Ichigo jumped back and grabbed one of his swords, raising it high in the air. "Getsuga Tensho." He swung the blade down, sending a wave of raw power at the shopkeeper. The attack created a huge gash in the ground, obliterating half of Urahara's shield and knocking his hat clean off his head. "Phew. Good thing I strengthened my shield at the last minute." Kisuke said, walking over to where his hat landed. I think you killed my hat. Good, it's tacky and ridiculous, Ichigo said. The sound of clapping stopped them from clashing again. Yoruichi appeared alongside a worried-looking Orihime. All right, you two, I think that's enough, she said. Hey Yoruichi, your boy toy here has some moves, Ichigo said with a laugh. The woman rolled her eyes at that and flashed forward, punching Ichigo square in the cheek, sending him flying into a boulder. Hee, sorry Kisuke. I should have mentioned the kid has a mouth on him, Yoruichi said, dusting her hands off. Orihime ran over to the rubble. Luckily she was used to this, having watched Miss Yoruichi and Ichigo train together before. Oh, that really hurt, Ichigo said almost sarcastically, while pulling himself to his feet, cracking his neck. I'm fine, Hime, don't worry. She used to hit harder. Orihime smiled, seeing her boyfriend was okay. That can be corrected if you want. Yoruichi threatened, shaking her fist at him. No ma'am, Ichigo laughed, smacking some of the dirt off his jeans. This Zanpakuto of yours is very impressive. Kisuke complimented him, looking around at the numerous identical blades still stuck in the ground. How does it work? A magician never reveals his secrets, Ichigo said back. Please, I promise not to tell anyone, Urahara begged. Fine, but I want a job here, so I can make some money, Ichigo said, grabbing a nearby sword. Deal. Kisuke watched fascinated as Ichigo grabbed 2 more swords and placed all 3 of them in the ground in a row. All right, this stays between the 4 of us, Ichigo said, glancing at everyone. Orihime, Yoruichi and Kisuke all nodded their heads, curious to know what his Zanpakuto's power was. Let's play a game. Ichigo pointed at the first sword on the right, and the blade set on fire. That's the fire sword. He pointed at the one in the middle, and the blade turned white and icy. That's the ice sword. He pointed at the last sword on the left, and the blade became electrified. And that's the lightning sword. Now watch closer. I'm going to take the lightning sword and switch it with the ice sword. He did just that, switching the 2 swords' positions. They all watched him, looking for whatever trick he was trying to pull. Now where is the lightning sword? Right there. They all pointed at the one in the middle, where it was obviously was. Are you sure about that? Ichigo pointed at the middle sword, and the blade ignited in flames. It was not the lightning sword. Or is it here? He pointed at where the fire sword was, except it was white and iced over. Or maybe it's there. He pointed where the ice sword was, except it was electrified. What is going on here? Yoruichi asked. The powers of the sword appeared to have switched seamlessly. What indeed? Even Kisuke Urahara was stumped here. Is it the ground? Each sword's abilities depend on the spot that they are in. Think simpler, much simpler than that. Seeing they were all still confused, he decided to spell it out for them. The power of my Zanpakuto allows me to bestow power onto others, and then move those powers around as I see fit. He picked up the sword and shifted through all the elements, even different weapon forms. The blade morphed and changed into all of them. Basically, it doesn't matter which sword I grab when I fight. I can rotate and move the powers around and use the one I need. Their jaws dropped at that, like he just described an impossible thing. That's, Orihime began. So, Yoruichi continued. Incredible, Kisuke exclaimed. He immediately began asking more questions than Ichigo could keep up with. Can you bestow power on other things besides swords? What about people? Yes, actually I can, but that's pathetic and stupid. Why would I bestow power on someone who can't achieve the power themselves? If you can't get strong on your own, then what's the point of someone else giving power to you? It still makes you weak, Ichigo grumbled. He had a long talk with his Zanpakuto about this, especially when he found out the repercussions of his power. But I still don't understand how this works. How do you bestow power? Urahara asked. Okay, you know how a Zanpakuto is like an extension of your soul, a piece of it. The 3 of them nodded. Well, I divided my soul into smaller pieces and used them as the core for each ability and put them into the swords that act as conduits. Me and my Ono Kishi make them in my inner world, Ichigo explained in the simplest way possible. That sounds almost godlike, Kisuke commented. Ah, don't say the G word, la 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 la. Ichigo covered his ears childishly. I don't want to be compared to something like a god. It's a slippery slope. His mind wandered back to a few years ago, when he discovered the downside of his ability. At that time, he only had 15 swords to his shikai. The newest of the swords, a blade that could bend and twist itself like it was made of rubber. An ability he called the wind. However, unlike the other swords, he got lazy when he made it and cut some corners. He was young and foolish back then. That all came back to bite him one day when he was fighting a small pack of hollows that were hiding out in a forest of the Rukin district. He had no choice but to use his shikai. Not realizing the wind sword was poorly made, he used it in battle, While it did cut straight through the hollow's head, it shattered in his hand after the blow. Ichigo had never had one of his swords break before, so he wasn't sure what it meant. It wasn't until later when he went to his inner world and found one of his knights bleeding to death on the steps of the palace that he realized the horror of what happened. Ichigo looked down on the knight as it lay on the steps holding the broken sword in his hands, blood pouring from the cracks in his armor. "I'm so sorry, Your Majesty," the knight chalked out. Ichigo sat down next to him and took off the knight's helmet, revealing what looked like a young teenage version of the old man who he left in charge of his inner world when he was not here. Seeing the state the knight was in, Ichigo knew there was nothing he could do but hold his armored hand as he faded away. "You did well, you can die with honor," was the last thing Ichigo told the knight before it disappeared into nothingness with a peaceful smile on his face. It was in that moment that Ichigo Kurosaki felt a large rush of more power, as the bit of his soul he used to make that sword returned to him stronger than when it originally left him. He felt disgusted and horrible afterward when he realized that if any of his swords died, he would grow stronger like some kind of parasitic monster. From that day forward, he gave each new sword the same care and time when he made them, and never got lazy or cut corners again. After all, they were his comrades, and comrades don't let each other die. "I'm not a god, I'm just Ichigo Kurosaki," he told Kasuke. "If you say so. I still think this power is incredible," the shop owner said. "So did I pass this little test or what?" Ichigo asked, walking next to Orihime and putting his arm around her waist. "Yup. I don't think there's anything more you need to be taught. Unless you want to learn Bankai," he asked slyly, thinking he could win Ichigo's favor if he helped the teen achieve Bankai quickly. "No thanks, I already have that," he stated nonchalantly, sealing his Shikai back into the withered katana. "Wait, what?" Yoruichi exclaimed. "If that's your Shikai, then what's your Bankai?" Urahara asked eagerly. "Some things are best left not knowing," Ichigo said darkly. "Now what room will we be staying in? And where is the shower?" he asked, picking a blushing Orihime up bridal style. "Back upstairs," Kisuke said, a little disappointed that he wouldn't be getting a chance to see Ichigo's Bankai today. "You're welcome to join us in the shower, Yoruichi." Ichigo winked at the mocha-skinned woman. "I'll pass, I don't do threesomes," she waved at him dismissively. "You never know what you might like if try it," Ichigo said in a sing-song voice while carrying Orihime back up to the shop. "First Rukia, now Yoruichi. Why do you keep trying to get other women involved, Ichigo? Aren't I enough?" Orihime asked. "Of course you are. I always thought a threesome was what you wanted." Ichigo actually looked at her shocked red face seriously. "All those times you were like, 'Oh Rukia, you should spend more time with us,' or 'Yoruichi, you can stay the night anytime you want,'" Ichigo said in a fake breathy girl voice, like some sort of phone sex operator. "I didn't mean it like that." Orihime flushed, embarrassed. "So that all wasn't implications. All right, I'm sorry. No more trying to invite Rukia, Yoruichi, Rangiku, or Soifon to our love-making." He apologized, listing all the women he enjoyed teasing. Soifon? Of all the women in the Seireitei, she seemed like the last woman to Orihime that Ichigo would try to invite. "What, she's kind of cute. But I think she's in love with Yoruichi." They reached the top of the steps back to the shop, where they found the bathroom, and took a much-needed shower together. It was still midday, giving them plenty of time to get comfortable in their temporary home. Meanwhile, after hearing the orange-haired teenager speak his full name, Karin was now fully convinced that he was her long-dead older brother Ichigo. She ran out of the weird underground rocky field hidden under the shop and all the way back home to the Kurosaki clinic. She bypassed her crazy father and worried sister and ran straight to her room. A few years after Ichigo died, Karin moved into his old room. There were so many questions she had. If that really is Ichigo, then why has he come back from the dead, she wondered. Only her family knew this. Karin could actually see the souls of the departed. She had been able to since she was 9. Her dad and sister Yuzu knew she could see them, but they unfortunately lacked the same ability. "I don't know what's going on here, but I'm going to find out," was her last thoughts on the matter. Later. "So tell me about this job you got for me," Ichigo asked, sitting at the table in a black tank top and a matching pair of sweatpants while eating a chocolate bar. Yoruichi took Orihime to go shopping for some decent clothes, leaving the men at the Shoten. "Well, I need someone to run a few errands for me. When the war against Aizen picks up, I'll probably be very busy," Urahara explained. "Just help me out when I need it, and I'll throw some money your way." "Deal." The two men shook hands. "Now explain to me why you did something so stupid as to hide this so-called Hajoku inside Rukia." Ichigo's smirk dropped into a frown. "Well, honestly, it was to keep it out of Aizen's hands." I had hoped Miss Kuchiki's Ryatsu would burn up the Hajoku and render it destroyed, while leaving her powerless. Ichigo's frown deepened at that. That's very cruel, you know. Do you have any idea how much danger you put her in? Ichigo asked. Something didn't seem right about Kisuke's explanation. Maybe he was just being too suspicious. But it almost seemed like the former captain purposely dangled the Hajoku in front of Aizen by putting it within his reach. And when I see her, I plan on apologizing from the bottom of my heart, Urahara said, sounding honestly remorseful. But that could all just be an act for all Ichigo knew. You better, or you'll never get to see my Bankai, Ichigo threatened, while Kisuke mumbled about how unfair life was. A knocking at the front door interrupted any further conversation they could have. Maybe you should get that, being the new employee, Urahara said with a cheeky grin. Yes, master, Ichigo said in a Cockney British, walking to the front door with a fake limp and hunchback. Opening the door, he was not surprised to see the Shinigami company he came with. But they were surprised to see him. Kurosaki, must you always hide your spiritual pressure? Hitsugaya asked, clearly annoyed. The head captain asked him to keep an eye on their new comrade, and so far he was doing terribly at that. Hello to you too, Ichigo said, continuing with the accent for his own amusement. I think you should come inside. Why are you talking like that, Ichigo? Rukia asked, getting a little irritated with the accent. The group walked inside, letting Kurosaki close the door behind. Where's Kisuke Urahara? Captain Hitsugaya asked. The master's having won his affairs, Ichigo said in his British accent. He's in the other room, you're all no fun, he said, talking normally with a pout. Ah, Captain Hitsugaya. What a distinct pleasure to meet the youngest captain to ever be inducted into the Godai 13's elite, Kisuke praised. Let's cut to the chase. We each need a gigi and a place to stay, Toshiro said, sounding all official and stern about it. Well, unfortunately Ichigo and Miss Oriheim arrived here first, and will be sharing a room. So I only have one more vacant room available, Kisuke said, hiding his amusement at their expense behind his fan. So where are we supposed to stay? Ikkaku asked. Well, I would suggest Tatsuki or Chad. I bet they have extra room to spare, Ichigo said aloud. I would avoid Uryu Ishida though, unless you want a Quincy arrow up the ass. It took some time, but they were able to work out an arrangement. Rukia and Rengoku would try for Tatsuki's place. Ikkaku and Yumichika would go for Chad, and Hitsugaya and Renji would have to share the room right next to Ichigo and Oriheim's room in the Urahara Shoten. Don't worry, we won't be too loud. Ichigo winked at the short captain and red-haired lieutenant. If you have to, just plug your ears. I'm not looking forward to this, Renji grumbled. Later, the two absent women came home, each carrying a bag of new clothes. Oriheim was nice enough to make them all dinner that night, and afterwards they drank and played cards late into the night. Ichigo sighed as he lay on his back with Oriheim curled up next to him, staring up at the dark ceiling. In a way, it felt good to be back in the world of the living, almost like he was alive again. He was also glad he opted to not get a gigi, since he knew his family could never see him like this. Maybe he would pop in as an invisible ghost and see how they were doing. Maybe, he sighed, pulling his girl closer to his body before drifting off to sleep himself. Dream. A small orange-haired child, wearing only a pair of raggedy brown pants and covered in bloody makeshift bandages, limped through the forest. The child was careful to stick to the shadows, having learned that was the best way to survive in his first week here. The poor boy had yet to find a single human settlement in this hellish jungle, only monsters and killers. He recently escaped a group of what at first looked like people, but when he got close enough for them to notice him, he realized they were a group of gaunt, hairless cannibals that acted more beast than human. Ichigo just barely got away with a few scratches and bites that he had to use what was left of his shirt to bandage up. Is this hell? If it is, then why did I end up here? He thought to himself. He didn't dare speak aloud lest he attract the monsters that lurked in the dark. He couldn't really remember much of how he died. All he did know was that his mother was with him. But did she live, or did she perish with him? If she did die, then why wasn't she here to protect him from this nightmare? Why? That was a question that kept repeating day after day as he was forced to survive the best he could. Ichigo in his wandering eventually found an empty cave to hide in. He didn't bother with hiding in trees anymore, since the monsters would just knock them down, or climb them, and some could even fly. Walking further into the dark cave, he spotted a light in the darkness. Ichigo, out of sheer curiosity, decided to investigate. He ended up in a small cavern with an unnatural hole in the ceiling. The light from the hole was shining down on a large boulder in the middle of a pool of water. On top of the boulder, Ichigo could see a sword jammed into the rock. The boy didn't know what compelled him to make his way over to the sword, but he did. Trudging through the water and climbing on top of the rock, He stood before what looked like an old antique blade that has been here for a very long time. "Take it," a voice in his head suddenly said. Ichigo followed the strange voice's advice and grabbed the hilt of the sword. He figured having a crappy old weapon would be better than having no weapon at all in this awful place. The small orange-haired boy pulled hard on the blade, but it wouldn't come out of the rock. "You don't have resolve, Ichigo," the same voice said, making Ichigo frown. "I do have resolve," the boy said, dignified. "I have resolve to survive." "Then pull the sword out," the voice said, almost sternly, like a father talking to his child. Ichigo aimed to show that voice, whoever it was, that he did have resolve. So he grabbed the hilt with both hands instead of one and pulled hard. This time the sword came out easily with a click, and Ichigo fell back on his bottom, holding what was now and would always be his weapon. "Well done, Ichigo," the voice praised. "When you need me, call my name." "Wait, what is your name?" Ichigo asked. "Oh no, Kishi." The voice sounded louder, almost like it was right behind him. But there was no one there. Just like all his other dreams, this one ended right then there. In chess, white moves first. Ichigo spent his time running errands for Urahara. Apparently the shopkeeper was working on some secret projects and needed him to pick up and deliver some things. In his free time he wandered around Karakura. He was basically a ghost and couldn't be seen. So he poked fun at normal oblivious humans and slayed any hollows that dared enter. Hitsugaya and his team each got a gige and enrolled in school to keep busy. Toshiro wanted Ichigo to do the same so he could keep an eye on him. But the orange-haired teenager refused. He didn't want to risk running into his still-living family, which would be awkward and depressing. Sometimes Ichigo would walk by the river where he and his mother died. Still, he couldn't remember much. It was like the memories were there. He just couldn't seem to grasp onto them. "So tell me about yourself, Toshiro." Ichigo started the conversation as he followed next him while they walked down the street. The young captain didn't want to talk, mainly because he was in a gige and Ichigo still refused one. "That's Captain Hitsugaya. You be wise to use my formal title," he chastised the teenage. "That's just not going to happen." Ichigo chuckled, blowing a pink bubble with his chewing gum. "How about I call you Captain Hitsugaya, if you agree to dance at my wedding?" "Not a chance." "When do you even plan on marrying Orihime?" Hitsugaya asked. "Oh, I don't know. I'm waiting for the right moment," Ichigo said, floating alongside the Shinigami in disguise. "What about you? When are you and the Hinamori girl getting married?" Toshiro blushed for a moment and turned away. "What makes you think we have that kind of relationship?" The captain wouldn't meet high eyes. "She's cute, and you tried to kill me when you thought I killed her." "I just thought you and her were a couple," Ichigo shrugged. "We're not. I do care about her, but I can't ask for that kind of relationship. Not now, at least," he said, staring forward sadly. "Yeah, I heard about what Aizen did to her. Freaking sicko," Ichigo spat. Ichigo didn't like manipulating people's emotions. Teasing people is one thing, but to toy with someone's heart, that was disgusting. "If I ever get a chance to fight Aizen, I'll deck him one for you both." That seemed to finally bring a smile to his Hitsugaya's face. "Unless I get to him first, there won't be anything left for you to fight," Toshiro said, rather darkly, making Ichigo chuckle. "Come on, I'll treat you to some ice cream," Ichigo said, heading to a local ice cream parlor that he discovered with Orihime a few days ago. He handed Hitsugaya some money that Urahara gave him, and let him order for both of them since he couldn't be seen by humans. Even so, a floating ice cream cone following next to the captain was sure to turn some heads, much to Ichigo's amusement. Later that night, Ichigo was patrolling the empty streets of Karakura, bored out of his mind. No hollows were showing up to ease his boredom. He almost felt like just going back to Urahara's shop and go to bed. But it wasn't the same without Orihime in his arms. Rengoku took Rukia, Orihime and Tatsuki for a girls' night, without telling Captain Hitsugaya, leaving Ichigo alone with nothing to do. Should have stayed to see what Renji was up to," he said aloud. Apparently the redhead was busy training with his recently acquired Bankai and didn't have time to hang out. Ichigo thought about who might not be busy right now when a loud thud halted his train of thought. He tilted his head back to see a giant hollow looming over him. "Oh yes," Ichigo exclaimed, happy that he found an outlet for his boredom. "So to whom do I owe this pleasure?" he asked. This hollow looked different than the others. It looked like some large man wearing a bunch of furs with a mask on its face and a big sword on its back. The only thing that told him it was indeed a hollow was the unmistakable gaping hole on its torso, and the fact that his sixth sense was screaming at him, telling him that this creature was a hollow, but no ordinary hollow. "Surely you recognize me, although I have changed a lot, just like you've grown, boy." The hollow spat with a sickening grin. "Do I know you?" Ichigo asked, tilting his head curiously. You don't remember me, boy? You don't remember the hollow that took your life and the hollow that killed my mother? Ichigo's eyes widened in realization. Grand Fisher, he said with a growl. He remembered that hollow. But it didn't look anything like this behemoth standing before him. That's right. I didn't get a chance to feast on your tasty soul and had to settle for the woman. But now that you've grown stronger, I can devour you and become even more powerful. Grand Fisher laughed as he explained his evil plan. Ichigo chuckled humorlessly as he held up his hands to launch 10 red beams from all his fingers, putting as much power into as he could. Gah! Grand Fisher yelled in pain as he was pushed back, receiving 10 large scorch marks on the front of his body. I kill you just like everyone else. The hollow grabbed his giant sword and attempted to crush the brat who wouldn't stop smirking at him. Do you have any idea how long I've been looking forward to this day? Ichigo said calmly as he drew his sword and easily blocked the hollows. The streak cracked from the force, but Ichigo remained still standing unharmed, while holding off Grand Fisher's sword with his own. What the hell is this? The hollow said, both shocked and angry. You're such a coward, Ichigo said, slicing through the giant blade. You knew I was in Soul Society, but you never had the balls to go there yourself. He used his superior speed and sliced through the hollow's ankle, making the giant stumble. I've waited a long time for this. Ichigo dodged the monster's giant hand as it tried to swat at him, slicing its arm off in the process. What's happening? Grand Fisher yelled in pain, clutching the bleeding stump where his arm was. He was also having trouble standing with his damaged ankle. You're outclassed, Grand Fisher. While you were busy fattening yourself up on the souls of the living, I grew stronger. Ichigo dashed forward with Shunpo and delivered a solid upward kick to the hollow's jaw, knocking him on his back. He then slowly walked across Grand Fisher's chest, dragging his sword through his skin along the way. Mercy, the hollow stuttered out as he watched the orange teenager point his sword at his chest. How many innocent people begged you for mercy before you ate them? Ichigo asked, driving his Zanpakuto into the hollow's flesh. How many? He shouted, stabbing into Grand Fisher over and over until the creature ran out of breath to scream. You took what mattered most to me. I'll probably never see my mother again, but I'll settle for the freedom of her soul. Before Ichigo could continue his onslaught, he felt the ghost of a hand on his shoulder. That's enough, Ichigo. Butchering him won't satisfy you. The voice of Oh no Kishi said. Killing a hollow means setting the souls inside it free, not torturing it to death. Oh please, I think I'm going to be sick. Just rip the thing apart already. It's what you want to do. The other part of his Zanpakuto said. Just because it's what he wants to do doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, the old man said. Ichigo sighed for a moment, letting his anger leave him before decapitating Grand Fisher in a quick, painless strike. He jumped off the hollow's corpse before it dissipated, and sheathed his sword before walking away silently. Ichigo didn't feel anything in his moment of triumph. He thought he would feel happy that he finally slayed the creature that killed him and his mother. But he didn't. After he was gone, 2 figures stepped out of the shadows. Wow, the blonde guy with large teeth whistled, staring at the spot Ichigo once stood. I thought your kid needed help. But Kisuke didn't say anything about psychological help. I didn't think that would turn ugly, Ichigo Kurosaki said, worried for his son's unusual behavior. I'm very confused, Ichigo. I was under the impression that your boy might need help with his hollow. But I don't see a problem here, Shinji Hirako stated, thinking that Urahara must be terribly misinformed. Yeah, it definitely feels like we're all missing something here. Ichigo turned and walked away in thought. For now it seemed like Ichigo had control of things, so perhaps there was nothing to get worked up about. Later. What's an Arancar? Ichigo asked, sitting across from Kisuke while reading a manga comic. He came back to the shop to relax and calm his wrath when he found that Urahara was still up. Basically, it's a hollow that takes off its mask and obtains the power similar to that of a Shinigami, the bucket-hatted shop owner explained. You can think of them as something as hybrid. Huh, that's interesting, Ichigo said, although he didn't sound all that interested as he flipped to the next page of his manga. Wait a sec, is the opposite possible? He asked when a light bulb went off in his head. You mean a Shinigami that obtains hollow powers? Yes, it is possible. But they're called Vizards, Kisuke said. Now that's something I'd like to see. Ichigo smirked, setting his comic down. I'll introduce you sometime, Kisuke said, returning the grin. You actually know some? Oh hell yeah, I want to meet them. He seemed genuinely enthusiastic about meeting a Vizard. I don't see what the big deal about these Arancars are. Grand Fisher wasn't so tough. The creature you fought was merely an imperfect Arancar, Kisuke said, tipping his hat down. Though I have a feeling Aizen might be using the Hajoku to make perfect Arancars and build an army out of them. And do what exactly? Take over Soul Society? Ichigo rolled his eyes at how childish that sounded. Perhaps he's after something else. And Soul Society is just a stepping stone to that, Kisuke said ominously. Yeah, whatever. Ichigo yawned and rubbed the back of his head, giving a wave and a good night as he headed off to bed. He walked in his room to see Orihime passed out on the bed in a gigi that Urahara provided for her. Lying next to her, he wondered if Rangaku took her drinking, or if Haim was just exhausted. And that worried him since he knew she was a huge lightweight. He got his answer when he noticed the designated driver bracelet cleverly strapped to her wrist. That's my girl, Ichigo whispered, giving her a kiss on the cheek before spooning behind her. Back in the other room, Kisuke was looking at a small device in his hand. It was something old he invented that could scan someone and read what they were with a few adjustments. While he was sitting here talking with Ichigo, he had it set to scan and analyze the boy. The results were confusing to say the least. First, the word Shinigami appeared in red letters when categorizing him. Then the screen glitches and changes to the word Quincy in blue letters. This just doesn't make any sense. The device can't make heads or tails of Ichigo, Urahara thought. He became even more concerned when the device flashed again, changing the word to hollow in black letters. Ichigo's powers were that of a Shinigami, so where did the Quincy and hollow elements come into this? There's so many pieces to this puzzle that he couldn't seem to find. The next day, Orihime and Tatsuki, accompanied by a silent Chad, were taking a short walk through the park. The two girls needed some fresh air after last night's fun. Somewhere close by, a crater impacted mysteriously on the ground by an invisible force, well invisible to normal humans. So who the hell are we looking for again? The big one dressed in white asked to his partner. His name is Ichigo Kurosaki, orange hair, withered sword. The smaller, paler one spoke in a monotone voice. Pay more attention when Lord Aizen is giving us orders, Yami. Whatever, Okura. Now where do we start? I don't feel like spending all damn day here. The big guy growled. Then do something to draw him out. The one now identified as Ulquira said dryly. Hee, all right. Yami laughed as he began to inhale. Suddenly dozens of souls from humans who were just minding their own business were sucked out and devoured by this hulking man. Sensing something was wrong, Orihime, Tatsuki and Sato ran over to find out what was happening to all the people around them. They found two being responsible. One was a big guy with a weird-shaped head and broken piece of a mask covering his jaw. The other was much smaller with black hair, pale skin and green emotionless eyes that watched them approach with a piece of a helmet stuck to the side of his head. Who the hell are these twerps? Yami asked, staring down at the newcomers. Hey Okura, are any of these punks the one we're looking for? He asked his partner. Do any of them look like the description I just gave you? Okura couldn't help the tiny bit of annoyance in his voice at the other's stupidity. Who are you people? Are you both hollows? Tatsuki asked, stepping forward. Hear that she thinks we're hollows. Yami laughed. I don't care who you are, but you killed a lot of innocent people just now. Tatsuki used her Ryatsu enhanced strength to recklessly charge at the big guy, foot raised to kick his head off. This proved foolish as Yami just grinned and swatted her away with his bare hand. The girl crashed into a tree with a loud crack, breaking her ribs and a bit of her spine. Tatsuki, Orihime ran over to help her friend. Orihime, run, she gasped out, unable to move. Chad stepped in to try and fight this bastard, while the two girls were away from the fight for now. I'm not leaving you here. Orihime summoned the power from her ring and let her healing barrier wrap around Tatsuki. Just hang on for a bit. A body dropping next to her made Orihime jump. She turned to see Chad, his armor-covered arm completely mangled beyond recognition. Sato. She created another healing shield and blanketed it over his ruined arm. Hey Okura, what should we do about the girl? Yami asked. She's just more trash. Deal with her like the others, the shorter one said heartlessly. The big guy grinned down at her and attempted to drive his fist into her face, but was stopped inches away by an orange transparent triangular barrier. Shun Rika, cage, Orihime whispered with an angry look on her face. Suddenly more triangle barriers appeared and attached to the one that held off Yami's fist, then folded around it, forming a triangular prism that locked everything inside into the space it appeared in. What the hell is this? Yami shouted, attempting to free his hand, but it wouldn't move from its trap spot in the air. He couldn't even move his fingers inside it. Damn it, he kept yanking to no avail. Interesting, she completely froze an area of space and time with her ability, Ulquira thought as he watched the girl. His eyes then drifted over to her fallen companions as he observed her power that was slowly restoring their bodies back to the state before they were wounded. Lord Aizen will want to know this. He watched as the girl's concentration momentarily slipped, and the prism that trapped Yami's fist shattered as he pulled it out, Nice try, girl. He went to punch the now unprotected Orihime, but his fist was stopped once again. Not by a barrier, though, but a much smaller, stronger hand. So what did I miss here? Ichigo asked, holding the big guy's hand in place. Orihime looked up to see her boyfriend looking a little unkempt and disheveled, wearing only a black tank top, matching sweatpants, a pair of flip-flop sandals, and a dark gray house coat loosely draped on him. Even Ichigo's hair looked messier than normal. Ichigo, Orihime said in relief. I'm bored, Ichigo spoke in a lazy tone while using his other hand to point 2 fingers at the large Arancar. What? Yami yelled in disbelief. Bored, Ichigo shot 2 red beams from his fingers at Yami's shoulder and hip, knocking him back. Bored, he shot another 2 at his kneecaps. Bored. You little shit. The Arancar growled, falling to his knees in pain. Orihime, get those 2 out of here, Ichigo said seriously without looking at her. Tatsuki had just finished getting healed and helped her carry a still heavily injured Sato away to a safer location. As much as they all wanted to help him, Ichigo was incredibly strong and could handle this. So big boy, you got me out of bed. Now how can I help you? Ichigo asked with a smirk. The truth was he feeling very depressed after killing Grand Fisher. Like he didn't know what to do with himself now that his original goal was complete. He didn't deny that he wanted to protect the souls in the Rukan district and improve upon the Soul Society. But he used to think of killing the Hollows as practice until he could get his hands on Grand Fisher. Imagine his surprise when he found the Hollow, and also found out he was leagues ahead of it in strength. It was nowhere near the battle he was looking forward to, and was just a one-sided execution, if anything. That's him, Yami. Ulquira finally spoke up after watching the boy show up, knock Yami back, and getting a good look at the old-looking Zanpakuto sheathed in his left hand. Huh, this is the brat we're looking for? Yami questioned arrogantly. Yes, it's just as Lord Aizen told us. Orange hair, withered sword. This is Ichigo Kurosaki. The smaller Arancar staring emotionlessly at their target. Lord Aizen? Is that what he's having you guys call him? Ichigo chuckled. Then again, I force my students to call me Professor Ichigo, so I can't really talk. I'm going to enjoy this twerp. Yami stood back up and grinned down at the orange-haired punk while cracking his knuckles. Question. Were you going to kill Orihime if I didn't show up? Ichigo asked, his face taking on a dark expression. Who the hell is Orihime? Yami asked. Incredibly hot, well-endowed girl that you were about to squash, Ichigo answered. Yell, and what if I was? Yami's big ugly grin turned into a frown as Ichigo drew his sword, tossing the now empty sheath away. Then I'm going to hurt you, like a lot. First I'll cut off your arms, then I'll stab you through the heart, probably say some real creepy shit. And then I'll kill you, Ichigo said with pleasant smile, like he was talking about the weather. We'll see about that. Yami attempted to grab him with his huge hand, but instead of dodging, Ichigo stood his ground and stabbed his sword straight through the Arancar's hand. Ah! Yami yelled in pain as Ichigo twisted his blade slowly. You know, I don't normally like hurting people, even enemies, that much. It's just can't stand it when someone takes away something that I love. Ichigo pulled his sword up, painfully bifurcating the Arancar's hand. Torturing someone who already took something from me is pointless. My Zanpakuto was right about that, because I can't get back what was lost. While he was talking, he easily sidestepped another attack and countered by slicing off the Arancar's right arm at the elbow. However, when someone tries to take away someone precious to me now, well then all bets are off. The other part of my Zanpakuto is right in that regard. Ichigo quickly sliced off the big guy's other arm and stood in front of the dismembered Arancar with a pissed-off look on his face. You'll pay! Yami screamed, charging a Siro in his mouth, since that was his only option at the moment. Ichigo disappeared with his flash step and reappeared directly behind Yami, stabbing his sword straight through his back and out his chest. Arg! His half-formed Siro dissipated immediately. Say something nice, Ichigo ordered, keeping his sword run through Yami's torso. What? The Arancar choked out, fearing for his life. Say something nice, he demanded once again. I don't know what. Yami started sweating in fear. Mr. Arancar, I've got all day, and I'm not going to kill you until you say something nice. Ichigo looked at him expectantly. I think you have cool hair. Yami said, the only thing he could think of at the moment. Lovely. Now lead us into the light. His sword glowed for a moment, changing into its gold-shimmering form. Oh no, Kishi, Ichigo stated calmly, and in an instant, the sword that impaled Yami flashed, and a dozen more swords exploded out of his chest. The Arancar collapsed face down as the Zanpakuto returned to its singular sealed state. Ichigo jumped on his back full of bleeding holes and began to jump up and down. Look, It's like a trampoline. He chuckled joyously as blood splashed out of the body beneath him. He turns from ruthless warrior to an animated child that fast. Ulquira, though, he watched the scene before him, wondering about what possible mental problems this Ichigo Kurosaki had. You know you look like a goth, Ichigo commented, jumping down off the fallen Arancar's body and facing the still living one. So are you going to fight me next? I'm all mellow now after killing this guy, and I'd like to go cool down. No, I have everything I need to report to Lord Aizen. Ulquira disappeared with a quiet boom and reappeared behind Ichigo. Holy shit. He's super fast. Ichigo turned wide-eyed to see the Arancar opening a garganta and dragging Yami's body with one hand. Hey, before you go, can you give Aizen this? Ichigo threw a yellow envelope at him, which Ulquira caught looking at it strangely. Just a little gift for him. The Arancar stuffed it into his jacket and dragged his comrade through the black rip in space. Ichigo finally let his guard down when it closed, breathing a long, drawn-out sigh. He sat down on the grass looking at the pool of Arancar blood nearby. Ichigo? Tatsuki walked over to him concerned. I'm finished, Ichigo exclaimed. An hour later, they all returned to Urahara's shop to tell everyone what happened. They found the other Shinigami. They're getting ready to leave a little late for that. Ichigo Kurosaki, what happened? Hitsugeya asked in a commanding tone. Captain Hitsugeya, I apologize in advance for this, Ichigo said, and before anybody could question him, he reared back and smacked Toshiro in the back of the head. Where the flying fuck were you? What are you talking about? Hitsugeya was too shocked to get mad that he was just smacked like a child. Do you have any idea how strong those Arancars were? The one I took down was one thing, but the other one would have killed me and everyone around me if he wanted, Ichigo yelled. How do you even know that? Rengoku asked. Look, I can't explain it, but I have this sixth sense with hollows. I can feel when they enter whatever realm I'm in, and when I look at them it's like their strength is laid bare before my eyes. Everyone was surprised and confused by his explanation, all except for Urahara, who looked suspiciously like he knew something that they didn't. Toshiro, you in charge of this team, so what would you have done if this Arancar stepped over my corpse and started laying waste to Karakura? Hitsugeya looked momentarily ashamed before steeling his face. I apologize. I was communicating with the head captain when we received an emergency call from the 12th, saying that powerful hollows had been detected. But you were already on the way there, Hitsugeya explained. Good God. The 12th Division is slow in detecting these things. Ichigo slapped his forehead in irritation. Don't ever say that around Captain Kuratsuchi. Word to the wise, Renji said. Oh please, I'm not scared of Captain Joker. Ichigo rolled his eyes. So what did the old man have to say? Let me worry about that, Hitsugeya said, walking out of the room. What was in that envelope you gave to the hollow? Tatsuki asked, remembering what Ichigo tossed to the Arancar before he left. Her orange-haired friend just grinned in a creepy way instead of answering her. Huko Mundo. I see, so that's why you retreated, Aizen said, sitting high on his throne. Ulquira had just returned from his mission to World of the Living to investigate how strong Ichigo Kurosaki was. His report was a visual representation he projected into all their minds by removing his eye and shattering it like glass, the crystal pieces scattering about the throne room. Yeah, why did you retreat? A loud voice asked. Ulquira turned to see one of his fellow Espada sitting there. Grimmjow, I think that's obvious. Had I proceeded, I would have been victorious, but the battle would have resulted in drawing the attention of the other Shinigami stationed in the town, he explained with cold, hard logic. So what? Just kill the rest of them then, Grimmjow tossed back. That's enough, Grimmjow, Aizen said calmly with an amused smirk on his face. I believe you have something for me, Ulquira, said Arancar, removed the envelope from his robe. I checked the contents. It appears harmless. Ulquira handed it to one of Aizen's personal assistants, who quickly delivered it to him up on his throne. Aizen opened it, revealing a simple greeting card with a picture of Karakura and the word "Wish you were here" printed on the front. His smile never left his face as he read the inside. Hey Aizen, we never had a chance to finish our little chat. How have you been? I'm fine. Just looking forward to the next time we meet. Perhaps we can talk over tea and cookies. See you soon. Ichigo Kurosaki, number 1 protector of Karakura Town. How amusing, Aizen commented with a light chuckle, seeing the small doodle of a mini Ichigo, giving a double peace sign at the bottom of the card interior. Jin was watching him from the side, and couldn't help but genuinely smirk. It appears that boy holds no fear for Captain Aizen, with the way he's taunting him with that greeting card. This should be interesting, Jin thought, stepping back into the shadows. Yami still lives, but barely, Ulquira brought up. It's doubtful that Yami will recover. Begin looking for a replacement espada. Aizen commanded to his Arancars. Hollow truths. Ever since yesterday, Captain Hitsugaya ordered someone to accompany Ichigo everywhere he went. After it was made clear that the Arancar came looking for the orange-haired teenager under Aizen's orders, the captain figured they might return looking for him again. Unfortunately, Ichigo always kept his spirit energy damn near impossible to detect. So now he was required to keep someone close by that could be detected in case of an emergency attack. Right now he was being followed by both Rukia and Renji, much to his annoyance. You should really start using a Gigi, Rukia said, walking alongside her orange-haired friend. From the outside, it looked like she was talking to thin air. Nah, I'd rather stay free and uninhibited by those things, Ichigo said, floating a foot off the ground. She means we look like idiots talking to nothing. Renji glared at him. I thought we were here to safeguard the city, not hang out with the humans. Ichigo stared at them with half-lidded eyes. He popped a cherry-flavored lollipop in his mouth as he descended to the ground, walking ahead of them. Eventually, they stopped when Ichigo paused and looked down an alleyway. Did you see that? He asked, biting down on the candy with a loud crunch. See what? Rukia asked. A hollow, a small one. Just then a small figure jumped out from behind the dumpster and ran off down the alleyway away from them. Renji and Rukia immediately took a mod soul pill and shed their Gigi to pursue the creature, while Ichigo followed at a lazy pace. Eventually, the two official Shinigami cornered it at a dead end. What they found was surprising. A small hollow the size of a dog resembling some sort of toad creature was cowering backed up against a wall. This is it. I'll take care of it. Renji drew his sword and prepared to dispatch the tiny hollow. Picking on creatures smaller than you. What a great way to describe the God 13 as a whole, Ichigo commented sarcastically, walking up to the scene. What's that supposed to mean? Rukia asked, sounding offended. Just what I said. Stand down, Lieutenant Abarai, Ichigo said, placing his hand on Renji's sword, lowering it away from the shaking and terrified hollow. What do you think you're doing, Ichigo? The redhead asked, pulling his Zanpakuto out of the other's grip. I said. Ichigo's eyes flashed yellow for a moment as he turned his sharp glare at him. Stand down. Okay? Renji backed away from the scary teen as he approached the hollow that started whimpering and crying. Ichigo, be careful, it's a hollow, Rukia warned. It's just a baby, Ichigo said without looking back at her. Yes, it's small, but, Ichigo quickly cut her off. No, I mean it's actually an infant soul. Ichigo gently placed a hand on the creature's masthead. Easy, easy, it's all right, he said calmly. Sometimes infants die during or shortly after birth. When that happens, their souls are left to wander. Never understanding what happened or what they are, they rapidly devolve into hollows. The two Shinigami looked confused. Apparently, they never heard of this before. They can't help what they do. They're just scared and alone. They don't know any better. But it's still a hollow, Renji said, looking down at the now calm, docile creature that Ichigo held onto. And what are hollows? They're lost human souls you Shinigami failed to save, Ichigo said accusingly. It is in their nature to seek out an end to their pain, just like it's in the nature of you Shinigami to clean up your mistakes. When it comes down to it, you're really nothing more than glorified garbage men. What are you doing? Rukia asked, watching as he felt around the hollow's head. Looking for a spot that will cause the least amount of pain when I put it down, Ichigo said, focusing his hollow vision, as he sometimes called it, to find the weakest point in the hollow's mask. There't. He then shot a beam quickly and painlessly through the skull from his fingertip, letting the poor infant hollow breath one last breathe and dissipate in his arms. I never thought that some hollows could be children. No, that's not true. We always knew that was a possibility. I guess it's just easier to put it out of our minds, Rukia said with a somewhat guilty look on her face. It's fine. There really is nothing we can do other than put them back into the cycle of life and death. Ichigo just shrugged and walked away. They both looked at him with mild awe. Wait, how did you know that Hollow was actually an infant? Renji asked, catching up to him. I already told you all about my sixth sense, right? Ichigo popped a peppermint into his mouth as he walked. Yes. But that still doesn't explain how you can see past a Hollow's mask, Rukia brought up. Look, I just can. What does it matter how I do it? Ichigo picked up the pace. It does matter. Rukia followed after him, not letting Ichigo get away without answering this time. I just can't tell you all right. This time Ichigo used Shumpo to get away, leaving them in the dust. He couldn't let them know the truth. The truth was that his gift of sensing hollows and feeling their powers was a gift he got from a very close friend who was also a hollow. A friend that just happened to reside within him. If the Gaudi 13 found out about that, he would definitely be executed, and Ichigo didn't want to leave Oriheim alone in the world again after everything. Call it selfish. But Ichigo just wanted to live a long time in soul society with her, and he couldn't do that if he was dead again. The next day. Is this the right place? Urahara asked as they walked through the warehouse district. This is the directions Urahara gave me. Ichigo looked around the empty buildings, then back to the piece of paper in his hand. He decided to give his Shinigami babysitters the slip, and find these so-called wizards that Kisuke wanted him to meet. The shopkeeper secretly passed him a note with directions when Hitsugeya wasn't looking, and now Ichigo along with Urahara were trying to find them. Let's just start knocking on every building until they come out. Ichigo ran up to the first warehouse to knock on it, only to run smack dab into an invisible barrier. Oh, he rubbed his forehead. Okay, I think we found the place. Should we try entering? Urahara asked, finally seeing the Kaido barrier that protected the place. Will the lord of the house please step forward? He called into the building. The barrier suddenly became a visible yellow color, with a small opening big enough for them to walk through appeared. Naturally, they walked inside. Ichigo violently kicked the door open and walked into the dark building while Urahara clutched his arm. This is a spooky place, he commented, looking around the empty warehouse. Well, we are spooky people. A voice from the shadows spoke. Out walked a skinny fellow with blonde short bowl-shaped hair and a wide piano-toothed grin. Whoa, nice teeth, Ichigo remarked. Really, first time meeting me, and that's what you come up with, the blonde guy said. Name's Shinji Hirako, by the way. Ichigo Kurosaki, and this beauty is Urahara now. Ichigo introduced himself and his girlfriend. Stepping forward, Ichigo suddenly had to dodge a high kick from a short yellow-haired girl. That was rude. He grabbed her ankle and threw her into Shinji. Who the hell do you think you are, throwing me like that? The girl yelled after punching Shinji in the face for catching her. Ichigo took one look at the girl in red and immediately charged towards her. So cute. Ichigo grabbed her up and hugged despite her kicking and screaming. Can we keep her, Urahara? Please. Hiyori started cursing up a storm and flinging her limbs about, trying to break free from his hold. Sorry, but she already has a family, Shinji said, trying to hold back his laughter at the scene in front of him, and wishing so badly that he had a camera. Aw, that's a shame, Ichigo said, sadly putting her down and easily catching her fists before they reached him. After that, the rest of the wizards appeared and introduced themselves. After talking with all of them, he discovered that they all shared a common origin. They were all simultaneously holofied by Aizen nearly a century ago. Afterwards, they were saved by Kisuke. Urahara was framed by the same man and escaped into exile along with Urahara. Eventually, the big question finally popped up. Shinji finally came forward and asked if he had undergone holification. If you're asking me if I possess the powers of a hollow, then no, I don't. At least not anymore. And with that, a whole new line of questions came. Easy one at a time, please. What did you mean you don't possess the powers of a hollow anymore? Kensei asked with narrowed eyes. Well, it's difficult to explain, but all the powers of my hollow go to controlling my Bankai. Everyone looked shocked that he just admitted to having a Bankai at such a young age. The power of my Zanpakuto would kill me under normal circumstances, so I put the hollow part of in charge of keeping that power in check and under control. Even if I wanted to don a mask and use a Zero, I couldn't, because if I did, I'd be swallowed by my own power. So we're no help to you then, Love said. It looks like he has everything under control, Rose chimed in. Wait, what made you all think I had a problem? Ichigo asked them. Urahara told me before you came here that you might be having trouble with your hollow, that it might be trying to take over, Shinji said with a shrug. Obviously, he was misinformed. Well, he did once. That psychotic dick is always threatening me, so I had to go in there and beat his ass down, Ichigo explained while shaking his fist. So you did have to fight him for control, Lisa pointed out. Yeah, he said he wanted us to switch places where he would be in charge, and I would be the one managing the Bankai. That happened when I was 14. Everyone seemed surprised that a 14-year-old was able to fight and defeat his own hollow. How did you beat him? Urahara asked. Ichigo had never told her about this before. Since the asshole doesn't play fair, I figured I had to learn how to fight dirty too. The best way to beat crazy down is with more crazy, Ichigo grinned. And eventually, I got him to teach me Bankai, and that was really the last time I spoke to him. That was why he always acted so crazy and weird all the time. Part of his hollow rubbed off on him, unfortunately. So what do you guys do for fun around here? Ichigo asked, while some of them smirked at what was to come. Later. Okay, I'm hurt now, Ichigo said from underneath the rubble. He just took a blast from Kensei's Shikai, knocking him into a crater. Somehow asking what they do for fun led to them taking turns trying to beat the crap out of him in an underground training room similar to Urahara's, or sparring as they like to call it. What the hell is this guy? Hiyori asked, watching Ichigo take a direct hit, and then get back up, wipe the blood from his chin, and get back into the fight. I have no idea. Shinji couldn't help but smirk, watching the kid take hits and bounce back like a spring, all while laughing like a little boy on a playground. He knew Ichigo could be quite the formidable opponent, and he hadn't even tried using his Shikai yet. Alright, that's enough. Take 5, everybody. No, come on, I was having fun, Ichigo whined. Freaking psycho, Hiyori muttered, just loud enough for him to hear. Oh Hiyori, do all the schoolboys fall in love with you? He taunted, nearly popping a vein in the angry girl's head. Ichigo, sit, and I'll heal you. Oriheim came over to kneel next to him, while he sat down crossed-legged, and let her use her power to heal his minor injuries. While that was happening, he decided to meditate and find out a few things. When he opened his eyes, he was in the star-cross-shaped floating city in the sky. His inner world. He looked in the distance, seeing the tower in the center with the palace atop it. He decided to forego talking to the old man today, and just go straight to the other spirit. Turning around, Ichigo looked over the edge to the gray desert below for a moment before taking a deep breath and jumped. With minutes, he landed on the sands below. There was cool breeze that greeted his presence. Looking around, he waited until the sand split, creating a set of stairs that led underground into a tunnel. Following the open path, he created a small red flame with his spirit energy and will to light the way. While walking, Ichigo thought about certain people's reactions as of late. Kisuke and Yoruichi were both utterly shocked by the true power of his Zanpakuto, and the Vizards couldn't seem to wrap around their heads around how he dealt with his hollow. They all acted like his powers were strange and foreign, like it was unheard of and never seen before. It led to Ichigo wanting to know exactly where this power came from, and where better to find out than from the hollow part of him that controls his darkest power. Are you awake? Ichigo called when he entered a vast dark chamber that seemed to go on forever. Tossing the light through the darkness, he could see the high ceiling held up by large black pillars. Walking along the extended balcony until he reached the edge, he looked down to see a sea of skulls and bones. Am I going to have to force you to come out? In response to his question, a throne made of the solid floor formed directly behind him, and he promptly sat down. Thanks. Don't mention it, a dark, watery voice said. The chamber began to shake. The bones that made up the floor rattled and parted as the colossal figure began to emerge. The giant was a white-skinned, shirtless man with black clawed hands, a black-horned skull mask covering his head, and long white hair spilling out from the back of the mask. My king, you've finally returned, the Titan said with a fake respectful tone and a bow. Hello? Oh no, Yami, Ichigo said, staring into the giant yellow eyes. We need to talk. I have questions. Why not just ask His Majesty upstairs? He couldn't see it, but Ichigo could tell he was grinning behind his mask. He probably wouldn't tell me. Most likely he'd say I wasn't ready. But I am, Ichigo sighed before continuing. I want to know, Yami, where does my power comes from? So spill it. The giant form of his hollow opened its black maw and let out a loud, creepy laugh. Ichigo had to wince because the distorted cackling sounded like nails on a chalkboard to him. Your power. Do you think this power came from you? That's rich, Yami laughed again. Do you think the power to divide out pieces of your soul and turn them into power is natural? What about the godlike power the Bankai gives you? Do you think that could ever belong to a Shinigami? Then where did it come from? Ichigo asked, standing up from the stone chair. Think about my king. The Zanpakuto you found as child. You knew someone had placed it there? A giant blue tongue licked the teeth of the hollow's mask. So you're saying these powers came from that Zanpakuto? But how and why? Ichigo was so confused. He was told by Yoruichi when she found him that a Zanpakuto's powers are shaped by the spirit and personality of the person who wields it. Me and His Majesty up there have always been with you. The instant you picked up that sword, we jumped inside it thinking we could finally have a vessel to channel our powers through and help you. Imagine how surprised we were to find a shitload of power already inside the blade. Yami scooped up a pile of bones with his giant hand while he talked. So we both fought over who controlled what. His Majesty got the part that allows you to split your soul and attach it to other things, while I got the unlimited power buried at the heart of the Zanpakuto. You should count yourself lucky. Lucky? Ichigo asked skeptically. Due to my position, I can't take you over anymore, or else we'd both be consumed by it. Yami pointed to the darkness in the distance, where Ichigo could feel the power of his Bankai waiting to be used and unleashed upon the world. I guess that does make me one lucky bastard, doesn't it? Ichigo smirked while walking away. Leaving so soon, King? We just got to talking again. Back upstairs to His Majesty. He could hear amusement in the hollow's voice. What's so funny, Yami? Ichigo asked, while the giant continued to chuckle. I know who he really is, and I can't wait to see the look on your face when you find out. The distorted voice continued to laugh in the darkness as Ichigo left. Toodaloo, he waved goodbye. While walking back up the way he came, Ichigo thought about that day in the Rukin where he found the Zanpakuto, and some things seemed to fit into place. Someone deliberately put that sword there for him to find. But the question was who? Who would want him to have this great power, and why would they give it to him? The next day. You want me to train him with my Bankai? Renji asked. Kisuke nodded his head. Well, why does Chad need my help? Because our friend Sato can only improve his powers if he battles someone with a Bankai, Urahara explained, waving his fan at him. You used to be a captain. Why don't you do it? Renji tried to find an excuse not to do this. My Bankai isn't suited for helping people grow stronger. Kisuke hid his eyes under his hat as he said this. Well, why doesn't Ichigo do it? He said, pointing to the orange-haired teenager who sat at the table reading a magazine while eating a chocolate bar. Without looking up from his magazine, Ichigo responded. If Chad went up against my Bankai, he would die in 2 seconds. I'm not being mean or bragging, it's just a fact. He said, taking another bite of his chocolate. I like the big guy. I don't want to kill him. Fine, I'll do it. Renji sighed, figuring he could at least get some practice with his Bankai out of this. Plus Renji's freeloading off us, and this would put him to good use, Ichigo brought up with a smirk. That's right, this would be a good way to pay back your debts to me. Urahara had what most would call an aha moment. Wait, how come Ichigo doesn't need any training? Renji exclaimed, trying to direct focus on someone else. Oh, I already have that covered. Ichigo went back to his magazine without missing a beat. Shinji liked him enough to invite him to come back to the warehouse anytime he wanted for some more training. Plus, he liked that Ichigo was one of the rare people who didn't take shit from Hiyori and knew how to press her buttons. It made for some good entertainment. Have fun, Red. I'm going to find Oriheim and make sweet love to her. Ciao. And with that, Ichigo stood up and disappeared out of the shop with Shunpo. It was getting late. The sun was about to set when he began walking down the streets of Karakura. He didn't seem to notice the dark-haired girl known as Karin Kurosaki, following him ever since he left the Urahara Shoten. Karin continued to follow the orange-haired teenager that claimed to be Ichigo Kurosaki. She had been following the past few days now. She figured out he was some type of ghost that always carried a sword, kind of like those guys in the black robes who also carried a sword. The only difference was that Ichigo didn't dress like them. So what did that mean? Was he one of them or not? She was determined to find out why and how her brother was back in the world of the living. High above the city, after the sun had fully set, a black rip in space appeared, and out stepped a group of Arancars dressed in white. The leader of the group looked down at the city with a bored look. All right, boys, here's the drill. Any humans with spiritual pressure are worth 10 points. Average Shinigami scum are worth 20. The blue-haired Arancar then grinned maliciously. Any captain-level Shinigami? Well, you leave those to me. The group then dispersed off to find their prey. There's got to be at least one interesting opponent here, he said as he descended to the city below, spotting someone who seemed to have a bit of Ryatsu to them. Damn it, where did he go? Karin thought with a frustrated sigh. She was following Ichigo as he walked along a fence like an acrobat. That was until he vanished from sight in a blur too quick to follow. For now, she decided to just give up. She already knew that he frequented that shop. He had to go back there at some point. Che. This won't even be worth the effort, a voice said from above her. Karin looked up to see a man dressed in white, with blue hair and a hole going through his stomach, staring down at her with a disinterested look. But unlike Aizen, I'm not into leaving things to chance. The guy smiled viciously and pointed his hand at her. A red ball of raw energy began to form in his palm. Karin wanted to run, but was too scared and confused to even move. Hi there, my little Arancar. A playful voice said from directly behind him as a hand gripped his shoulder. The blue-haired Arancar turned his head to follow the arm. But before he could get a good look at who it was, he was spun around, and a fist was driven into the side of his face, sending him flying over the city. Karin watched Ichigo deck that guy with enough force to send him miles away, then stand in midair shaking his wrist. Damn, what the hell is that guy's jaw made of? Steel? Ichigo, her dead brother looked at with complete seriousness. I'll explain later, was all he could say before disappearing in a flash. Little fucker actually socked me one, the Arancar growled out, spitting the blood out of his mouth. After he righted himself in the air, he took a moment to try and figure out how strong the guy who punched him was. After all, he didn't even sense him with his Pesquisa, which was weird. Introductions, I think, are in order, Ichigo said immediately after reappearing a few yards. The Arancar looked over to see a bright orange shaggy-haired teenager, wearing a black long-sleeved deep V-shirt, purposely torn and frayed jeans, and black boots, with an old rusted Zanpakuto attached to his black studded belt. "I know you. You're the little bastard who Okura was sent to investigate." Ichigo Kurosaki. His grin widened. "Sup?" Ichigo waved at him. "How about a name for you, blue boy?" "Grimmjow Jaggerjacks, 6th Espada." He introduced himself. "Cool name. But what's an Espada?" Ichigo had to sound out that last word to keep from mispronouncing it. "We're the top 10 strongest Arancars in Hukomundo, and I am the 6th strongest," Grimmjow stated proudly. "Seriously, Aizen ranks you all by number." Ichigo laughed at that, much to the Arancar's annoyance. "Though I guess it's easier than having to remember all your names," he shrugged. Suddenly Grimmjow tried to drop kick him, but Ichigo quickly caught his foot with one hand. "Oh, were we starting?" Now he was the one smirking viciously as he rapidly spun the Arancar around before throwing him. "I guess this might be interesting after all," Grimmjow said, facing him again. "Hey, want to see something cool?" Ichigo grinned back at him, popping an orange-flavored lollipop in his mouth. "Lead us into the light." "Oh no, Kishi.